In a quiet, unassuming moment, Kim Jae-hyun's world is reduced to the audible crunch of a fried snack, his gaze lost in the shadows cast by his dark, shaggy hair. The crinkle of a chip bag was the only sound in the room as Kim Jae-hyun calmly reflected on a single, overwhelming truth: after everything, he was still alive. Yet, his moment of calm reflection was cut short by a heavy sigh, his expression turning pensive as a crucial caveat came to mind. The quiet squalor of a dimly lit room, a young man named Kim Jae-hyun sat surrounded by trash, the silence broken only by his crushing realization that he was all alone. Staring into the quiet emptiness of his home, Kim Jae-hyun was struck by the stark realization that he was the sole occupant of the sprawling 1,000 square foot space. Beneath an overcast sky, the ruins of a collapsed building lay starkly before the one apartment that still stood, a structure purchased through his father's momentous decision to use all their family's savings and take on a staggering amount of debt. Standing before a towering apartment complex amidst a symbolic rain of money, Kim Jae-hyun revealed the property's true value, a significant tax benefit granted after a 2-year residency. Staring at his phone, Kim Jae-hyun lamented how his solitary life had become a trap when the apocalypse suddenly hit. His growing panic was then confirmed as the screen coldly announced that the network was unavailable, leaving him utterly alone. Kim Jae-hyun's otherwise normal day was abruptly interrupted by a piercing shriek from just off-panel, causing him to flinch in startled surprise while still clutching his smartphone. A sudden sound whipped past Kim Jae-hyun, shattering the quiet moment and leaving him frozen in wide-eyed, uncomprehending shock. The quiet morning on Kim Jae-hyun's balcony was abruptly shattered by a screeching whoosh as a massive, dark-winged creature shot past, leaving him to wonder what in the world it could have been. A deafening shriek and the explosive crash of a metal grate announced the arrival of a terrifying multi-mouthed beast, its glowing eye fixing on Kim Jae-hyun as he looked up in pure alarm. A blur of motion and a cry of sudden shock, Kim Jae-hyun was violently thrown, his body contorting as he tumbled helplessly through the air. Above the sprawling city, the air was violently torn by a piercing screech as a shadowy, dragon-like creature plunged from the heavens, its glowing yellow eyes a beacon of impending chaos. A wave of unseen power suddenly washed over Kim Jae-hyun, forcing a desperate cry from his lips as he clutched his head in agony. With a sickening thud, a massive hand slammed down on Kim Jae-hyun's head, forcing a choked grunt of agony from his lips. Amidst a chaotic shriek and a thudding impact, a protective blue energy barrier suddenly materialized, its hexagonal grid flashing an urgent alert that an unauthorized entity was attempting to breach the perimeter. In the quiet solitude of his sanctuary, a notification materialized with a soft whish, detailing a new passive skill perfectly suited for the ultimate shut-in, the declaration of home base. Hunched over the soft glow of a holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun finally let out a long breath, a wave of profound relief washing over him as the critical system message appeared. Spurred by his success, he rose to his feet, his relief hardening into concentration as he willed the glowing blue rectangle to lift into the air, affirming that it was responding correctly. In a dimly lit void, Kim Jae-hyun stood enveloped by a soft blue glow, grimly acknowledging that this power was the only reason he had survived. In the somber silence of a desolate city, Kim Jae-hyun watched from his window, marking the 3rd day since the world had ended. A single bead of sweat traced Kim Jae-hyun's temple as his mind settled on a troubling memory, the strange ability that had always kept him safe. Alone in the quiet darkness of a sparse room, Kim Jae-hyun sat hunched on the floor, his world reduced to the cold, blue glow of the holographic system floating before him. From the digital void, a glowing blue interface materialized, its text forming an unyielding cage as it declared that the ultimate shut-in was forbidden from ever leaving the house. In the stark silence of his room, an exhausted Kim Jae-hyun stared at the glowing blue interface beside him, a bitter laugh escaping his lips as he dismissed its mention of an ultimate power as a cruel joke. It began with a cryptic system message, its cold blue light illuminating Kim Jae-hyun's pained face as he protested the sudden restriction that declared the ultimate forbidden. As tension mounted, a cunning smirk played on Kim Jae-hyun's lips, his calm facade betrayed only by a single bead of sweat as he cast a furtive glance to the side. Surrounded by a bleak assortment of instant meals on his apartment floor, Kim Jae-hyun finally articulated his deepest worry: the fundamental problem was food. His anxiety sharpened into a specific fear as he bit his finger, realizing that even his stockpile of instant noodles was about to run out. The unexpected chime of a notification cut through Kim Jae-hyun's mounting anxiety, his startled expression questioning the sound as a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. With the Keelican finally defeated, 2 blue system messages swished into view, announcing a significant gain in experience and new skill levels from the successful hunt. A glowing blue system window suddenly flared to life before a wide-eyed Kim Jae-hyun, notifying him that he had gained both experience and a new skill. A sudden footstep from below drew the startled gaze of Kim Jae-hyun, who leaned over the railing, his breath catching in the tense silence. Deep within the dungeon, the air split with the shrieks of a savage feeding frenzy as a horde of green-skinned creatures armed with daggers fell upon a massive blue beast, tearing it apart even as it desperately fought back. Standing amidst the debris that was once his home, a bewildered Kim Jae-hyun wiped the sweat from his face, groaning as he questioned how the Keelican that crashed and died could have possibly been counted as his own kill. In a rapid succession of chimes, glowing blue notifications materialized in the air, announcing the acquisition of a new skill and the automatic collection of nearby loot. The quiet was shattered by a piercing scream from somewhere unseen, jolting a young man named Kim Jae-hyun from his thoughts as he looked around in startled confusion. Monstrous figures suddenly shrieked in agony, their yellow eyes wide with terror, leaving Kim Jae-hyun to wonder what could possibly be afflicting them. A sudden eruption of dark, swirling energy overwhelmed three goblin-like creatures, their agonized shrieks filling the air as they were thrown into chaos. A triumphant chime cut through the silence as a glowing blue system window materialized, confirming the collection of loot and the deposit of a staggering 2 million won into his wallet. Staring out from the railing, Kim Jae-hyun was struck by a sudden, jarring confusion, unable to grasp the meaning of what he was hearing. It began with a sudden, brilliant flash that tore through the darkness, causing Kim Jae-hyun to look up with a startled cry. First sign of trouble was a sharp turn of Kim Jae-hyun's head, his eyes widening in sudden, stark alarm. Bathed in an empowering light that suddenly filled his kitchen, Kim Jae-hyun looked up as a system notification confirmed the return of his power, declaring his home an impenetrable fortress against any unauthorized entry. Following this declaration, two more glowing panels materialized before him, detailing a passive skill to maintain his lifestyle and a digital wallet holding an astonishing 2 million won. A single bead of sweat slid past Kim Jae-hyun's wide, disbelieving eye as an overwhelming question consumed him: could this truly be happening? Reading the unbelievable prompt to restore the house's functions, his initial shock gave way to an ecstatic, sweat-beaded grin. The sharp clack of his steps echoing through the space, Kim Jae-hyun burst forward, a blur of focused desperation and speed. That blur of speed came to a sudden stop with a soft whish as he peeked from his hiding spot, his face a mask of unsettling, wide-eyed eagerness. It began with a simple, everyday act, a hand twisting a faucet handle, the sound of splashing water echoing in the quiet space. In a moment of focused preparation, Kim Jae-hyun's finger descended upon a glowing button, bringing the induction cooktop whirring to life. The moment hung heavy with unspoken tension, broken only when Kim Jae-hyun's shadowed face cracked into a deeply unsettling grin as he stammered out a hesitant affirmation. As golden motes of light filled the air around him, Kim Jae-hyun collapsed to his knees, overcome with tears as he triumphantly declared that everything was finally back to the way it was before the world had fallen apart. Spurred by a sudden, hopeful realization, he scrambled for his phone, declaring that it too might finally be working. A heavy, jarring beat echoed the sudden crisis in Kim Jae-hyun's hand, where his smartphone screen starkly declared the network was unavailable, cutting him off completely. Gripping his hair in a fit of frustration, Kim Jae-hyun let out a heavy sigh, muttering to himself that the device in his other hand still refused to work. Quiet moment shattered for Kim Jae-hyun, who could only stare in wide-eyed disbelief, his hand clutching his hair as a sudden, distressing realization washed over him. In the quiet disarray of his apartment, Kim Jae-hyun knelt, his attention suddenly captivated by the impossible glow of a USB drive nestled amongst the trash. The day began like any other for Kim Jae-hyun, who sat completely absorbed in the glow of his multi-monitor setup, the quiet clicks of his mouse echoing through the room as he browsed an endless gallery of cat photos. The story begins with the soft click of a camera shutter, freezing a tender moment in time as a dark-haired woman lovingly cradled her crying newborn in front of their home. A cherished memory surfaces with a faint click, revealing a sunlit day where a small boy in a yellow hat looks up with pure joy, his hand held tightly in a loving grasp. Under a brilliant, sunny sky, the click of a camera preserved a fleeting moment of pure joy for young Kim Jae-hyun and his smiling parents. Surrounded by family, Kim Jae-hyun watched the candles flicker atop his birthday cake, the air filled with the quiet warmth of a cherished celebration. In the quiet of his studio, bathed in the cool glow of a monitor, Kim Jae-hyun sat hunched over his desk, his silence as heavy as the unspoken thoughts racing through his mind. In a moment of heavy stillness, Kim Jae-hyun's face remained obscured by his hair as he let out a long, weary sigh. Staring forward with a grim resolve that made his eyes glow an intense blue, Kim Jae-hyun cemented his singular purpose: he had to bring his family back here. With a look of unyielding resolve, Kim Jae-hyun moved forward, his steady steps echoing his silent declaration to press on, no matter what. Sudden realization broke through Kim Jae-hyun's composure, his gaze shifting to the side as he grappled with the unexpected information. As a new day dawned, an unexpected power awakened before him, materializing in the sky as a holographic interface for the ultimate shut-in system and its newly unlocked Level 1 shop. Disoriented and suddenly surrounded by unfamiliar aisles, Kim Jae-hyun stared wide-eyed, questioning aloud if he had somehow been transported into a shop. Digital Storefront 4, the ultimate shut-in shop, materialized in a glow of blue light, displaying a surprising balance of over 2 million won and offering the chance to register an item for the very first time. With a sudden, electronic whir, a glowing blue system window materialized out of thin air, granting the one known as the ultimate shut-in a new level 1 shop ability to purchase registered items. In a quiet moment of reflection, the unexpected idea of a shop surfaced, prompting a weary Kim Jae-hyun to rest his chin on his hand and ponder its meaning. Curiosity overriding his weariness, he reached out and tapped the shimmering blue shopping cart icon that had just materialized before him. A flash of blue light, a system window materialized, displaying a maxed-out wallet brimming with over 2 million won and prompting its user to register an item for the very first time. The air before a pensive Kim Jae-hyun shimmered and coalesced into a glowing system prompt, inquiring if he wished to register an item for the first time. A quiet morning found Kim Jae-hyun in his kitchen, his expression pensive as he pulled open the refrigerator door with a soft rattle. His quiet moment was shattered by a sudden beep as a glowing blue interface materialized before him, its text declaring a stark new reality: the ultimate shut-in was forbidden from ever leaving the house. Standing on his balcony, Kim Jae-hyun's brief hope shattered against the shimmering hexagonal barrier as he sighed, realizing that even his newly leveled-up skill had failed to break his confinement. In a moment of intense clarity, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze sharpened with the determined realization that he had just learned something new. With a painful groan and a resounding wham, a mysterious bird-like creature was violently struck from the sky, crashing motionlessly onto a cold city rooftop. As the triumphant words, "LV up," materialized before him, a confident smirk grew on Kim Jae-hyun's face with the sudden, thrilling realization that killing monsters was the key to gaining new skills and leveling his power. Gazing out at the sprawling city from his balcony, Kim Jae-hyun contemplated the glowing interface and a perplexing dilemma. He could only leave the house once his level was high enough, yet he was forbidden from venturing out to kill the monsters required to do so. In a sleek high-rise apartment, a resident's sarcastic thought that it wasn't as if monsters would smash against their window was violently answered by the piercing shriek of two such creatures beginning their assault. Just as a horrifying realization dawned, a skeletal bird-like monstrosity erupted from the city's ruins, its piercing shriek and the cackles of its smaller minions shattering the desolate silence. As a tense silence fell, Kim Jae-hyun gripped the surface before him, his worried expression hardening with the dawning, dangerous realization that he might be able to kill those goblins. Inside the quiet hum of the car, Kim Jae-hyun reached into a side compartment, his hand closing around a water bottle with a deft flick of his wrist. Moments later, standing outside the car, he flung the bottle with tremendous force, the object slicing through the air with a sharp whish. The forceful shove, Kim Jae-hyun sent a large water bottle plummeting from the balcony, a silent act of grim determination. A sudden thud from below shattered his focused silence, and leaning over the crib with a wide, fanged grin, he ecstatically declared that it had worked. A sinister realization struck Kim Jae-hyun as he clutched the strange, black device, a menacing smile spreading across his face as he understood he could now use it to hunt them down. That menacing smile faded in an instant, however, replaced by wide-eyed shock as a sudden sight during his workout caused him to cry out in confusion. Victorious screeches echoed from a rooftop as a swarm of goblin-like creatures celebrated over the massive, bleeding form of a beast collapsed in the foreground. Amidst the skeletal remains of a once great city, a ravenous horde of goblins descended into a frenzied rush, tearing into their grim feast with savage abandon. The moment shattered with a desperate cry from Kim Jae-hyun, his face a mask of panic and sweat as he pleaded for them not to go. Now, that same sweat of desperation poured from him as he grunted, channeling his anguish into the raw power needed to lift a heavy dumbbell overhead. Driven by sheer desperation, Kim Jae-hyun hurled a dumbbell from his balcony, praying it would hit something. His desperate act, however, was answered not with the expected thud of metal, but with a blinding flash as a brilliant white blade materialized to violently impale the creature below. A cold sweat broke across Kim Jae-hyun's brow as the world seemed to twist into a dark, swirling vortex around him, the crushing realization of just how bad the situation had become freezing the strained smile on his face. His terror found a single, absurd focus as he leaned over the balcony, realizing with dawning horror that the mysteriously glowing object on the ground below was his very last dumbbell. Trapped on his balcony, a desperate Kim Jae-hyun frantically scanned his surroundings for a heavy object, realizing with a sinking feeling that the TV and computer were too unwieldy to be thrown far enough. His frantic search was cut short by a piercing shriek from below, causing him to flinch back in alarm. The attack began with the terrifying shriek of a large, green-skinned beast, its glowing eyes fixed on an unseen foe as it pointed forward with a commanding roar. It began with a shudder that shook Kim Jae-hyun to his core, his wide, sweat-slicked face illuminated by a sliver of light in an otherwise suffocating darkness. From the darkness, a piercing shriek echoed from a horde of monstrous, green-skinned humanoids whose glowing yellow eyes burned with a mixture of agony and rage. Amidst the ruins of a desolate city, Kim Jae-hyun sprinted with desperate urgency, his bandaged arm a stark reminder of the danger as he evaded the swarm of green-skinned humanoids closing in around him. In the tense quiet of the room, Kim Jae-hyun anxiously watched from the side, trying to convince himself the situation wasn't so bad as he realized the figures he was waiting for were finally heading his way. The world returned with a single blink, and a quiet murmur of realization escaped Kim Jae-hyun as his gaze settled on something unexpected. As the dust of his recent trials began to settle, Kim Jae-hyun focused his intent on the glowing blue interface before him, commanding the system to open its shop with a swift, determined gesture. A new opportunity unfolded against a vast blue sky as Kim Jae-hyun reached towards the interface for the ultimate shut-in shop, the system prompting him to register an item with his balance of over 2 million won. With quiet determination, Kim Jae-hyun leaned forward and pressed his finger against the luminous system interface, setting a new course of action in motion by registering the item. As a holographic prompt appeared in his sparse room asking if he'd like to register an item, a determined Kim Jae-hyun immediately confirmed his choice, indicating the dumbbell he was holding. With a firm grip, Kim Jae-hyun held the glowing, grid-patterned dumbbell as a holographic system flared to life above it, initiating the registration process against the clear morning sky. Staring at the dumbbell in his hand, a blue holographic interface flickering over his concerned face, Kim Jae-hyun came to the unsettling realization that the system was pricing items based on their value from before the world ended. The world glitched with a sudden chime as a translucent blue window materialized in the sky, presenting a classic non-slip 6 pounds dumbbell and prompting for its purchase. Bathed in the glow of a holographic system, a determined Kim Jae-hyun eagerly confirmed the purchase of a classic non-slip dumbbell, the interface audibly clinking to finalize his choice. It began with a sudden flash of light, as Kim Jae-hyun stood transfixed before a mysterious hexagonal panel that had just roared to life. Stunned into silence, Kim Jae-hyun watched as a mysterious, grid-patterned monolith suddenly roared to life, unleashing a brilliant column of blue light that pierced the sky. A surge of pure, unbridled enthusiasm lit up Kim Jae-hyun's face, his eyes sparkling with determination as he pumped a fist and declared that he was ready. Tranquility of the city morning shattered as a dark, blurred object streaked from the heavens with a powerful whoosh, plummeting towards the streets below. In a violent explosion of light and gore, Kim Jae-hyun's devastating energy blade descended from above, silencing the shrieks of the green-skinned creatures it tore through. With the fall of the level 7 goblin, a cascade of blue, holographic notifications chimed into view, announcing the gain of experience points and the addition of 3,345 won to the hunter's wallet. Bathed in the cool glow of a holographic screen, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist in triumph as a notification confirmed his wallet now held a staggering 3,342.3 E. On a blood-soaked patch of earth, the air was shattered by the agonized shrieks of goblins as one fell, grievously wounded, amidst its scattering kin. In a flash of unseen movement, a devastating force tore through the goblin horde, sending them flying amidst a violent whoosh of displaced air. In a sudden explosion of unseen power, the air tore with the shrieks of goblin-like creatures as they were sent hurtling backward amidst a shower of splintered earth. Against the vast blue sky, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist and gritted his teeth, cursing the bitter frustration of a near miss. Instead of dwelling on his frustration, he immediately channeled it, causing several glowing, grid-patterned pillars to surge to life with a powerful hum as his hand passed over them. With a surge of raw power and focused determination, Kim Jae-hyun hurled the heavy hexagonal weight downwards, the very air seeming to strain around the forceful motion. The projectile landed with a devastating impact, caving in the monster's skull in a spray of blood as the creature cried out in agony. A wide, satisfied grin broke across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he gripped a dumbbell, pleased by the glowing blue interface that hovered just above him. A sudden chime heralded a significant change as a glowing blue system window materialized, granting him the curious title of the ultimate shut-in, and unlocking a level 1 storage subspace for his items. It was a moment of pure discovery under an open sky as Kim Jae-hyun, realizing he had gained a new storage ability, eagerly commanded it to activate. With a sudden flash of blue light, Kim Jae-hyun's training regimen began, his hand clenching a heavy dumbbell as the system's holographic interface activated before him. A sudden chime announced the appearance of a hexagonal system prompt asking if he wished to store the item, and without a moment's hesitation, Kim Jae-hyun confirmed it. Instantly, his confirmation was met with a resounding zwoom as a glowing, grid-like dumbbell materialized in his outstretched hand. As a system window materialized before him, offering to summon a classic non-slip 6 pounds dumbbell from his unique storage. A wide, hopeful smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he enthusiastically confirmed the request. In immediate response to his confirmation, a dumbbell constructed of glowing, grid-patterned energy materialized in his hand with an electronic hum. Triumphant smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he held aloft a newly summoned, glowing item, realizing with a surge of excitement that he could now call forth anything from his storage at will. The implications of this power warped his triumphant smile into a menacing grin, his eyes glowing with a cold blue light as he considered the grim new possibilities now available to him. A resonant chime shattered the quiet as Kim Jae-hyun's hand extended towards the glowing blue holographic device that had just sprung to life before him. With a whispered command to raise, a colossal spectral hand immediately manifested before him, pulsing with an intense blue energy. In a blinding torrent of ethereal light, Kim Jae-hyun poured all his focus into a repeated command, calling forth glowing blue dumbbells that materialized one by one in the air around him. The glowing dumbbells he summoned then solidified into massive, dark geometric structures, plummeting from the heavens with a deafening roar. The chaotic din of battle, a grotesque green creature shrieked as an unseen force slammed down upon it with a vicious swoosh. Amidst the sickening thwacks and splatters of the continued assault, system notifications relentlessly announced the hunting of one goblin after another, confirming a significant gain in experience points. The first sign that his life was about to change appeared as a shimmering blue system message, announcing that 54,661 had just been deposited into his wallet. A sudden notification sound echoed as a holographic interface materialized, asking if he wished to register an additional item. A dazzling, fanged smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he enthusiastically agreed, his excitement practically sparkling in the air around him. In the quiet of his modern apartment, Kim Jae-hyun breathed a sigh of relief as he finished reviewing his inventory on a glowing holographic interface, confirming he had everything from essential food supplies to the very dumbbells he once used to kill goblins. The mundane silence of Kim Jae-hyun's day was shattered when, with a sudden whoosh, a glowing blue hexagonal interface materialized before his bewildered eyes. In the quiet glow of a digital interface, Kim Jae-hyun sat puzzled on his sofa, suddenly questioning why he had lost a single one and speculating that it might be a maintenance cost. A heavy sense of foreboding washed over Kim Jae-hyun, a bead of sweat clinging to his temple as he reluctantly turned to face the source of his anxiety. A low hum broke the silence of the kitchen, drawing attention to a silver refrigerator as someone off-panel theorized its restored power was the source of the sudden change. Standing alone in his room, a wave of pained frustration washed over Kim Jae-hyun as he placed his hands on his hips and muttered a curse against the troublesome goblins. His mind flashed back to the brutal slaughter he'd orchestrated, dropping dumbbells from above to crush the creatures, only for the survivors to flee and relocate. Gazing out over a tranquil sky that offered no challenge, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fists in frustration, questioning if any monsters remained for him to fight. Unbeknownst to him, the answer to his challenge lay scattered on the ground far below, where the silent, gaping maw of a colossal severed head stared sightlessly from a field of shattered bones. Leaning against a railing, the young hunter Kim Jae-hyun surveyed the quiet surroundings, concluding that with no monsters in sight, he would have to find a new approach. He then raised a hand to his brow, wistfully wishing that a lost Keelican would find its way to him. In a sudden, jarring blink, the world narrowed to a single point of disbelief for Kim Jae-hyun, his eye wide with shock as a bead of sweat betrayed his mounting tension. The source of his terror then lunged forward in a blur, a single-eyed monstrosity whose gaping, tendril-filled maw opened with the sickening sound of flapping wings. As the stunning realization crashed over him, Kim Jae-hyun's mind reeled in wide-eyed disbelief at the impossible creature he was witnessing, a Keelican. Spurred by this revelation, he surged forward, convinced in a triumphant rush that the heavens had not forsaken him. The struggle began with a single, focused act of will, as a pair of hands strained against a knotted cloth, pulling with all their might on a cold, unyielding metal bar. His determined pull was met with a sudden, sharp clank as the metal frame finally shifted under the force. High atop a skeletal metal tower, Kim Jae-hyun desperately scrambled upwards as a monstrous winged creature dove towards him with a terrifying rush of air. Then, with a piercing shriek, its colossal, glowing eye fixed upon him, capturing his tiny, startled reflection within its pupil. From a high-rise balcony, Kim Jae-hyun unleashed a blinding energy blast, forcing the massive, shark-headed beast before him to turn with a guttural shriek. With a deafening shriek that ripped through the air, a monstrous, winged creature plummeted from the sky, its fangs bared as it dove directly towards a stunned Kim Jae-hyun. A bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple as he looked up, his face breaking into a wide, triumphant grin with the stunning realization that it had actually worked. Suddenly, a piercing caw shattered his moment of triumph, drawing his gaze upward to a monstrous, glowing creature forcing its way through the open window. With a confident smirk, Kim Jae-hyun watched the grotesque monster repeatedly slam into a shimmering hexagonal barrier, certain he only had to wait for the beast to smash its own head against the house. His heart hammered in his chest with the thrilling certainty that he would level up the moment the creature was finally dead. Kim Jae-hyun's momentary peace was shattered by the sound of flapping wings as a brilliant blue, bird-like creature burst through the window, forcing him to recoil in pure shock. His shock turned to agony as a powerful whoosh of blue energy erupted from the creature, slamming into him and sending him reeling backward. In a sudden, blinding eruption of glittering power, Kim Jae-hyun found himself straining against an immense force, his mind silently questioning the overwhelming surge. The peaceful morning on the balcony was shattered as Kim Jae-hyun uttered a single word in disbelief, watching a tremendous force suddenly rip through the serene blue sky. The wall behind Kim Jae-hyun suddenly exploded inward, a monstrous shadowy limb tearing through the rubble as he recoiled with a cry of absolute disbelief. A quiet moment shattered as Kim Jae-hyun looked up in startled apprehension, his world suddenly eclipsed by the horrifying descent of a colossal, multi-eyed monstrosity from the clouds. Against a backdrop of encroaching darkness, a single bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's face as his eyes widened in pure, unadulterated terror. The quiet expanse of the sky was suddenly broken by the sharp, guttural cry of a massive, dark-feathered bird. The attack came without warning. A great shadowy beak struck a glowing hexagonal barrier with a resounding crash, triggering a system alert that an unauthorized entity was attempting to enter. As relentless system alerts warned of an unauthorized entity attempting to enter, Kim Jae-hyun stood trapped within a hexagonal energy field that shuddered violently with each deafening impact from the outside. Flinching at the sheer force of another deafening blow, he anxiously voiced his hope that the barrier would not be breached. Knowing he had to do something, Kim Jae-hyun desperately thrust his hand forward, calling out to access the shop as a blue panel of light swished into existence before him. Gazing intently at the glowing blue interface before him, Kim Jae-hyun came to the quiet realization that his ability to collect loot was limited only to monsters in his immediate vicinity. Weight of recent failure settled heavily on Kim Jae-hyun, whose troubled expression betrayed just how disastrously the goblin hunt had gone. Amidst the desolate ruins of the city, I watched in frustration as the surviving goblins carried away their fallen, knowing that once the bodies were gone, I couldn't collect any loot. With grim determination etched on his face as he surveyed the city, Kim Jae-hyun knew his survival depended on the monsters dying close enough for him to claim their loot. Just then, a nearby barrier flashed with a digital warning as an unseen force hammered against it, and watching the unauthorized entity attempt to enter, he resolved that there must be a way to kill it. While routinely registering groceries, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes suddenly widened in shock as the staggering 2,000,001 balance on the screen triggered an abrupt and vital realization. The scene erupts in a flash of intense blue light as the protagonist, Kim Jae-hyun, thrusts his hand forward, his voice straining with a bizarre command to purchase 10 sets of cooking oil. A sudden, electronic hum filled the sun-drenched bowling alley, where Kim Jae-hyun stood mesmerized by a glowing, futuristic panel that had just activated above the pins. Spurred into action by the glowing panel, he bolted across the polished floor, his face etched with strain as he clutched a precarious armful of drinks. The quiet hum of a kitchen awakening, the day's preparations commenced with the sharp clack of a pot on the stove, followed by the smooth pour of oil and the electronic beep of a burner igniting. The quiet preparations quickly gave way to strained effort, as Kim Jae-hyun grunted against the thick, wrapping resistance of the mixture he was vigorously stirring in the pot. In a moment of intense, personal ritual, Kim Jae-hyun daubed a potent golden liquid onto his sweat-drenched torso, the substance splashing against the sash tied firmly around his waist. With his preparations complete, he turned to the more mundane task of cooking, simultaneously commanding the holographic system interface to open the shop. A glowing blue interface materialized, its prompt to register the new item already highlighting the affirmative choice. The ritual began in hushed silence, a hand steadily pouring a thick, golden substance onto a glowing cerulean platform. With the flick of a lighter, Kim Jae-hyun pierced the oppressive darkness, his determined face illuminated as he brought the flame to a makeshift torch. In a sudden, blinding flash of heat, Kim Jae-hyun could only stare in astonishment as the staff in his hands erupted into a roaring pillar of flame. From high above, the air tore apart with a thunderous boom and a rattle of feathers, revealing a colossal bird-like creature that dwarfed the lone figure of Kim Jae-hyun as he stood watch from a nearby railing. Reacting in a flash, he sprang to a nearby window and thrust his flaming staff outwards, sending a roaring wave of fire toward the monstrous bird. With eyes wide in panic and sweat dripping down his face, Kim Jae-hyun let out a desperate shout, commanding the summoning of cooking oil. With a deafening shriek, the sky tore open to reveal a glowing hexagonal rift, disgorging a monstrous entity with a gaping maw from within a cascade of golden energy. The night air tore with monstrous shrieks as Kim Jae-hyun, trapped on a high-rise balcony, desperately swung a flaming weapon against the two grotesque creatures flailing before him. In the heart of the inferno, Kim Jae-hyun's rage manifested as he swung a massive, flaming weapon overhead, roaring a furious command for his enemy to die. In the heart of a ferocious battle, Kim Jae-hyun launched himself forward, unleashing a devastating fiery strike that drew a piercing shriek from the massive, furry monster before him. The air itself seemed to ignite as a monstrous avian beast of pure fire materialized with a deafening roar, its single glowing eye promising utter destruction. In a blur of motion, Kim Jae-hyun glanced over his shoulder, a predatory smirk playing on his lips as he declared his confident acceptance. A monstrous roar tore through the air, and from his vantage point high above, Kim Jae-hyun could only watch as a cataclysmic wave of fire erupted, consuming the street in an instant. The ordeal began with a sickening snap and a heavy thud, as Kim Jae-hyun clung desperately to a metal bar, his face a mask of pure agony. From the heart of the inferno, a monstrous beast erupted, its body consumed by crackling flames as it unleashed a deafening, guttural cry. Amidst swirling shadows and roaring flames, a colossal entity slammed into the ground, its menacing growl announcing the terrifying arrival of Kim Jae-hyun's monstrous form. As fire and smoke billowed from a ravaged skyscraper, casting the shadows of unseen behemoths across its facade, a cold system notification announced that the loot from the destruction had been collected. His quiet evening was shattered by the sudden glow of a holographic screen, where Kim Jae-hyun watched in stunned disbelief as a sum approaching 10 million won materialized in his wallet. The world suddenly lurched with a deafening rumble, sending a shocked Kim Jae-hyun tumbling helplessly down the stairs with a cry of confusion. As a sudden, deep rumble shook the very air around him, a panicked Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fists and cried out, demanding to know what was happening. A deafening roar suddenly tore through the air, and in that split second, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to a single point of sweat-drenched, wide-eyed terror. A hum of raw power surged through the night as Kim Jae-hyun, illuminated by his own determined energy, stood poised on the edge of a high-rise balcony. Without warning, a sharp, throbbing agony erupted within Kim Jae-hyun, forcing a pained grunt from his lips as he doubled over. In the crushing silence of an endless void, a luminous blue gate suddenly thrummed to life, cutting through the darkness with its ethereal glow. A sudden, concussive force tore through the desolate silence of a long, empty corridor. It began as a subdued family moment, the quiet gathering around a coffee table instantly shattered by a startling, thunderous roar that ripped through the room. In a moment of sheer terror, the world narrowed to a close-up of Kim Jae-hyun's sweat-soaked face as he choked out the horrifying revelation that he could see people. His terrified gaze was fixed on a family sitting peacefully in their living room, prompting a confused Park Hae-won to ask if they weren't just the neighbors from next door. World seemed to fracture as a wave of agony crashed over Kim Jae-hyun, forcing him to grip his head as one of his eyes transformed into an abyss of pure darkness, heralding an inescapable doom. His agonizing transformation immediately drew the horrified attention of the entire group, with both Choi Hyung-jun and Park Hae-won frozen in a state of deep concern. In a startling surge of power, Kim Jae-hyun's eye flared with an intense blue light, revealing to his shocked senses a world teeming with figures he could never perceive before. This sudden, overwhelming vision crashed down upon him, forcing him to his knees with a cry of sheer agony as a violent torrent of dark energy swirled into existence. The quiet moment was abruptly shattered by a sharp ding, causing a startled Kim Jae-hyun to gasp in shock, desperately wondering what he had just heard. As if answering his unspoken question, two profiles suddenly materialized with a swish, revealing a married couple in their late 30s, Choi Hyung-jun and Park Hae-won. A digital interface flickered to life with a soft swish, displaying the portraits of two young sisters, the first child, 6-year-old Naeon Choi, and the second, 4-year-old Seoyeon. It began with a single, deliberate step on the polished wooden floor, the sound echoing softly in a room filled with the quiet light of a new day. Barefoot in a sun-drenched room, a burdened Kim Jae-hyun voiced a heavy question to the floating holographic interface, asking what would happen if he chose not to grant them citizenship as the system began to search for an answer. His gaze hardened with the stark realization that denying them citizenship was a death sentence, for they would be left to face the monsters alone. The smirk of quiet authority, Kim Jae-hyun issued a decisive command, the holographic system flaring to life to confirm his order granting citizenship to all 4 individuals. A firm nod confirmed his satisfaction, prompting him to immediately check if he had unlocked any new skills related to granting citizenship. As the world blurred into an unfocused haze, a sudden chime announced the awakening of a new skill for the ultimate shut-in, granting him an ultimate eye that promised nothing would escape his gaze within the confines of his home base. Standing before a glowing holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun questioned the system about citizenship-related skills, prompting the blue screen to immediately begin its search. In a flash of hexagonal blue light, a system window materialized to define his domain with a new passive skill, Declaration of Home Base, an absolute power that forbade anyone from breaching his boundaries without permission. In a sudden rush of discovery, Kim Jae-hyun's face was illuminated by a glowing blue holographic interface as he pointed forward, exclaiming that he had finally found it. A sudden chime pierced the quiet, heralding the appearance of a system window that laid bare the current state of affairs, a list of the 4 survivors, their fluctuating levels of trust, and a population dangerously close to zero. The quiet briefing was shattered by the mention of 600 people, a number so staggering that Kim Jae-hyun could only stare in wide-eyed disbelief, stammering that it was an impossibly large crowd. As if summoned by a silent command, a translucent blue interface shimmered into existence with an audible ding, laying bare every detail of Hyungjin Choi's status and abilities. Standing in his quiet living room, Kim Jae-hyun's focus narrowed on the holographic interface that had just appeared, a startling realization dawning as he processed the options for experience and loot distribution rate, a power that would let him take a share of what others earned. A wide, cunning grin stretched across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he finally understood the true method for his advancement. As a glowing blue system interface materialized before him, Kim Jae-hyun paused, his finger hovering over newly unlocked management functions while he suddenly questioned if he even possessed the authority to assign them quests. The flash of inspiration, Kim Jae-hyun's face hardened with resolve as he announced he would fill in the details himself and see if his new plan worked. Before a glowing blue quest screen, Kim Jae-hyun dismissed the basic rewards, his focus shifting to a far grimmer consideration as he decisively set the failure penalty to death. But in the next instant, his grim resolve shattered as a system notification declared the quest cancelled, leaving him trembling in utter denial. The quest cancellation notice abruptly flashed before him with a dismissive flop. Kim Jae-hyun sank to the floor, his dejected appearance a stark contrast to the cold certainty that he could kill them all whenever he wished. Surrounded by the ethereal blue glow of his power, his worried expression betrayed the heavy burden of this realization as he acknowledged that this was what he could truly accomplish with his abilities. In the suffocating silence, a bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple as he wrestled with the immense and daunting question of how to use what he now possessed. A look of intense concern crossed Kim Jae-hyun's face as his mind fixated on the disquieting concept of the ultimate eye. In the quiet solitude of a dim room, a shadowy energy began to swirl around the pensive Kim Jae-hyun, emanating from him as he sat before a mysterious glowing blue object. Amidst the tense quiet of the dimly lit room, a sudden hum resonated as Kim Jae-hyun cried out in shock to his huddled companions, exclaiming that he could now see them. In the heavy silence that followed their ordeal, an anxious Park Hae-won turned to her companion and asked what they were supposed to do now, but he offered no answer, his back a wall of silent contemplation. As desperation filled their cramped sanctuary, Park Hae-won gently placed a hand on Choi Hyungjun's head, insisting she had no choice but to go find water, a suggestion he met with terrified protest. In the tense quiet of their home, a worried Park Hae-won looked down, her voice tight with panic as she asked where they could possibly find more water. The weight of their dire situation pressing down on him, a distressed Kim Jae-hyun clutched his head and announced a plan to check the large convenience store nearby, hoping its size meant some supplies would still be left. The urgency of his plan became painfully apparent when one of the children broke the tense silence, whispering to their mother about being thirsty and deepening the palpable fear gripping the adults. A wave of profound distress washed over the bespectacled man, his head bowed as his hands clenched tightly on the surface before him at the agonizing thought of Seoyeon. Her anxious grip on his arm prompted him to turn, asking her to wait there and trust that he would find whatever he could. Without warning, a sharp, unseen agony shot through Park Hae-won, forcing her to wince as her face contorted in distress. As a torrent of dark energy erupted from Kim Jae-hyun, a desperate command echoed through his mind, deactivate the ultimate eye. Realizing with growing concern that the situation was far worse than he had anticipated, Kim Jae-hyun sat before a glowing holographic interface and commanded it to open the shop. A bead of sweat traced his temple as he pondered a new problem, wondering if there was a way to register more items before commanding his skill window to open. A sudden chime shattered the quiet of his confinement, materializing a system window that presented the ultimate shut-in, with 3 new life-altering options, a shop, a maintenance skill for his home, and a personal storage space. Instantly recognizing that he had been right all along, a triumphant grin spread across his face as he clenched his fist with powerful resolve. A glowing system interface presented the critical choice of upgrading the ultimate shut-in shop skill, an offer that was met with a decisive and enthusiastic confirmation. In a sudden flash of brilliant blue light, a mysterious holographic display filled with humming hexagonal patterns materialized before Kim Jae-hyun. With a series of triumphant chimes, a system notification announced that the ultimate shut-in shop had been upgraded to level 2, expanding its capacity to 20 items and applying a store-wide 10% discount. In a moment of quiet evaluation, Kim Jae-hyun brought a hand to his mouth, thoughtfully conceding that what he saw was not bad. Lost in thought against a hazy outdoor backdrop, Kim Jae-hyun stared into the distance, concluding that his best course of action was to invest in the shop and lifestyle skills to prepare for others he might encounter. The system rewarded his progress with a glowing notification, confirming that the ultimate shut-ins shop had been upgraded to level 3 and granted powerful new features. As a message detailed an astonishing new feature capable of restoring used items to their former glory, Kim Jae-hyun fell into a deep, contemplative silence, his hand resting thoughtfully by his chin. Confident smirk spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he savored his latest achievement, concluding that upgrading the shop to level 3 was well worth the effort before commanding it to open. In a flash of blue light, a system notification materialized with an audible whoosh, announcing a powerful upgrade to the ultimate shut-in skill and its newly unlocked level 3 shop. The soft blue light of a holographic screen illuminated Kim Jae-hyun as he reached out, confirming his purchase of drinking water and tangerines with a single, decisive tap. Tapping his chin in quiet contemplation, Kim Jae-hyun devised a plan to supply his neighbors with power and water, shrewdly realizing he could demand other valuable things in return. As his plan solidified, a system notification suddenly flashed, announcing his ultimate shut-ins lifestyle maintenance skill had been upgraded to level 2, unlocking new Vassal features. A new and baffling term hung in the air, leaving Kim Jae-hyun sitting cross-legged on the floor, his troubled gaze fixed upwards as he questioned the meaning of Vassal features. A sudden, quiet tapping echoed through the deserted hallway, causing Kim Jae-hyun to halt before a closed door, his knuckles white around the metal bar he held as a makeshift weapon. Kneeling protectively over her two frightened children, Park Hae-won looked up with anxious eyes, her voice a desperate plea as she addressed the man looming in the foreground. He responded by crouching down, forcing a reassuring smile as he promised his daughters he would be right back and urged them to stay safely with their mother. As their father stood resolutely at the doorway, his two young daughters looked up with wide, anxious eyes and asked if he was really going out there. Gently resting a hand on his tearful daughter's head, he promised to return with food and water and asked her to listen to her mother, but the distraught child could only begin to stammer out a protest. A terrified scream shattered the morning's quiet as Park Hae-won, her face streaked with tears, shrieked a desperate warning about the monsters waiting just outside. Her warning was answered in a terrifying instant as those very monsters lunged forward, a chaotic onslaught of glowing yellow eyes and bared, sharp fangs. The quiet moment shattered with a gasp of shared terror, as two young women stared wide-eyed while one pointed a trembling finger at an unseen horror. Frantic chase began in a desperate sprint for their lives, Park Hae-won's terrified gaze fixed on the darkness behind them as she and her companion fled. The scene suddenly erupted into violence as Choi Hyung-jun lunged forward, forcefully restraining a terrified Park Hae-won while another woman watched in helpless shock. In a blur of desperate motion, Kim Jae-hyun surged forward with a companion held tight, even as Park Hae-won stumbled behind them, the shadows of three monstrous figures stretching ominously closer. In the suffocating silence, the weight of a sudden realization pressed down on Kim Jae-hyun, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his tense temple. That suffocating silence was shattered by the children's wails, and as Park Hae-won knelt to comfort them, he pleaded for them to hush and not cry. A bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple, his gaze falling as he grappled with the agonizing thought that this might be the last time he would ever see them. His jaw clenched tightly, the sweat glistening on his skin a stark reflection of the silent panic seizing him. The tense silence was shattered by the sudden appearance of a swinging golf club, causing Choi Hyung-jun to turn in shock as a terrified Park Hae-won instinctively clutched her frightened child in the background. His desperate work with the wires was suddenly interrupted by a frantic knocking at the door, causing the panicked Kim Jae-hyun to look up from Park Hae-won's unconscious form on the floor. Stillness was broken by a sharp rap against the door as a polite, yet unfamiliar voice called out from the other side, asking to be let in. In the tense quiet of a dimly lit room, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes widened in fear as he gripped a golf club, questioning whether the shadowy figure before him was actually a person. Fear warred with curiosity in the dimly lit hallway as a voice first warned that opening the door wasn't safe, fearing a monster, before cautiously calling out into the silence. In the tense silence, a terrified but resolute Kim Jae-hyun planted himself before a cowering family, his knuckles white around a makeshift weapon as he faced the unseen threat. Consumed by a sudden, brutal rage, Choi Hyung-jun relentlessly swung a golf club down upon the terrified and defenseless Park Hae-won. In the sudden, heavy silence that followed the assault, a terrified Kim Jae-hyun cautiously peered around the corner, clutching a broomstick as he hesitantly asked if the danger was gone. In the suffocating silence, Kim Jae-hyun took a single, deliberate step forward, his anxious gaze sweeping the area as a bead of sweat traced a path down his cheek. Planting his staff with a decisive clack, he steeled his resolve, his gaze fixed on the blinding light that now consumed his vision. A moment of peace was shattered by an unseen threat, forcing Kim Jae-hyun to shield his terrified family as their desperate screams filled the air. A cry of pure anguish tore through the air as a desperate man clutched his terrified wife, begging for his family to be spared. The air crackled with tension as Kim Jae-hyun loomed over a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, his sinister smirk promising something dreadful was contained within the dark bag he held. The air crackled with sudden tension as Kim Jae-hyun shielded a frightened Park Hae-won, his voice trembling as he demanded to know who they were. The quiet morning was interrupted by a new face at the door, a nervous man holding 2 plastic bags who introduced himself as Jae-hyun Kim, the resident now living next door. The neighbor's gentle demeanor vanished as he suddenly restrained a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, calmly offering him water and tangerines with the promise they could talk afterward, a bizarre kindness that drew a choked cry of disbelief from his captive. Fragile calm shattered in an instant as Kim Jae-hyun glanced to the side, his eyes widening in alarm at the sudden and unseen disturbance. The unseen disturbance had sent Park Hae-won to the floor, where she now desperately shielded 2 terrified children in her arms. Looking down with a calculated smile despite the sweat on his brow, Kim Jae-hyun decided he couldn't refuse the offer of food and water, recognizing this man could be the very help they needed. Inside a tense, makeshift shelter, a bespectacled man named Choi Hyung-jun finally offered a cautious invitation for Kim Jae-hyun to come in, even as a wary woman in the background shielded 2 small children from the stranger. The air crackled with unspoken hostility as Kim Jae-hyun stared down a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, their unblinking gazes locked in a silent, suffocating confrontation. Amidst a curious crowd of adults and children, Kim Jae-hyun offered a wide, unsettling smile, hoping his nervous laughter hadn't frightened them. Shifting his gaze to his surroundings, he thoughtfully noted their clever use of blackout curtains to manage the glare. In the dim, uncertain light, a pensive young man named Kim Jae-hyun consumed a strange yellow item, believing it would reduce the chances of a monster attack. Surrounded by an encroaching darkness, Kim Jae-hyun sat alone at a table, a small fruit cupped in his hand, as he resolved that his first task must be to bring back the light. In a sudden blink, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes opened to reveal an intense, otherworldly blue glow. The otherworldly glow from his eyes then erupted into a flash that restored the power, prompting a shocked Choi Hyung-jun to wonder aloud how such a thing could have happened. As a flustered Kim Jae-hyun tried to manage his 2 young daughters, the calm Choi Hyung-jun extended a bottle, suggesting he give the children some water first. On what seemed like an ordinary day, 2 young girls named Nae-eon and Seoyeon were left momentarily stunned as a hand abruptly snatched a water bottle from between them. In a shared moment of desperate thirst, 2 young women tilted their heads back and drank deeply, the sound of them gulping water filling the quiet air. The tense moment was shattered by Seoyeon's sudden, violent coughing fit, causing Kim Jae-hyun to cry out in alarm and ask if she was all right. In the quiet stillness of the room, Kim Jae-hyun's pensive expression and weary gaze betrayed the heavy weight of an unspoken concern. On a sun-dappled street, a man knelt before 2 cautious young girls, breaking the quiet afternoon by holding out a bright tangerine and asking if they liked them. Across a table thick with apprehension, Choi Hyung-jun offered a single orange, a simple gesture that was met with a nervous, stuttered thank you. A tender moment unfolded as a woman reached for the orange clutched in little Seoyeon's hands, offering to peel it for the drooling child. It began as a tender gesture, a hand offering a single piece of orange with a playful request to say, ah. The afternoon began with a moment of quiet tenderness as Kim Jae-hyun gently offered a piece of fruit to a wide-eyed, trusting child. The meal began with a moment of pure culinary bliss, Kim Jae-hyun's entire being consumed by the flavor as his eyes sparkled with unrestrained delight. In a moment of quiet playfulness, a young woman with brown hair tied in buns squeezed her cheeks into an exaggerated, beaming smile. A moment filled with warmth, a woman with long brown hair smiled down at her companion, who looked up happily and confirmed she absolutely loved it. As a mother's hand extended a single, glistening orange slice to one child, the other immediately cried out, demanding her own piece with youthful impatience. Her demand quickly satisfied, the little girl beamed with joy while munching on her prize, her delight drawing a playful poke to her belly from an amused Kim Jae-hyun. A sudden chime broke the silence as the system registered an increase in trust for several citizens, culminating in the significant unlocking of Seoyeon Choi's loyalty level. With a sudden chime, a system window materialized in the air, confirming that Seoyeon Choi had fulfilled the requirements for Vassal registration and displaying her status as a new subordinate. As Choi Hyung-jun waited in the background, Kim Jae-hyun murmured in contemplation, his focus drawn entirely to the glowing blue data flickering across the system interface before him. A moment of seemingly innocent cheer as Choi Hyung-jun interacted with a child, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze was fixed on a starkly different reality displayed before him, a system window showing Hyungjun's trust level was a mere 31. In the quiet of his home, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze hardened with determination as he thoughtfully touched his chin, resolving that he absolutely had to earn the man's trust. The opportunity to earn that trust presented itself immediately, with Kim Jae-hyun now sitting across from Choi Hyungjun, who nervously stammered an invitation to lunch. A bead of sweat tracing his temple, Kim Jae-hyun's heartfelt thanks faltered, his words trailing off as the immense weight of the kindness he'd received left him at a loss for how he could ever repay it. The heavy silence was suddenly broken by Choi Hyungjun's suggestion that they step outside for a private chat, to which he could only offer a nervous and hesitant agreement. In a moment of quiet intensity, Choi Hyungjun's sudden question about whether Kim Jae-hyun had accepted the citizenship shattered the stillness, leaving him utterly startled. His surprise quickly shifting to stressed confusion, he gestured toward the glowing blue notification and explained that his family had already accepted that very alert 30 minutes ago. Through the glow of a holographic interface, Choi Hyungjun asked if anything unusual had happened, prompting Kim Jae-hyun to gravely admit that they had been briefly unable to move afterward. Connecting the incident to the system, he pensively asked if people were temporarily frozen until their citizenship was granted. The air grew heavy with unspoken history as Kim Jae-hyun, his face a mask of determination, made a solemn promise to help restore the other man's old life. That determination instantly shattered, however, as the other man's response left him wide-eyed and stammering in utter disbelief. The air in the hallway grew tense as Choi Hyungjun gravely explained the one absolute rule of their new reality to Kim Jae-hyun. So long as he remained inside his home, he would be completely safe from the monsters that roamed outside. A bead of sweat trickled down Choi Hyungjun's face as he processed the absurd proposition, stammering to ask if it could actually be done. Faced with an unspoken challenge, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze hardened with resolve as he declared with unwavering certainty that he could do it. Despite his unwavering certainty, Choi Hyungjun pressed the issue with grave concern, warning him that his life might be on the line and questioning if he was truly sure. In a moment of suffocating silence, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to a single, cold drop of sweat rolling down his tense face, his expression a portrait of disbelief. Driven by a desperate resolve, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist and swore he would do anything, confessing that he had been on the verge of searching for food and water himself. The gravity that belied his subtle smile, Kim Jae-hyun gave a slow nod, his gaze holding firm as he declared his readiness to risk his life. In the tense silence, the bespectacled Choi Hyungjun looked up in utter confusion at the unexpected and imposing figure of Kim Jae-hyun. The question hung in the air, leaving the bespectacled man to scratch his ear in anxious contemplation as he hazarded a guess that the price was likely around 500,000 won. Lost in a moment of quiet desperation, Kim Jae-hyun's thoughts were consumed by a single, crushing reality. Keeping the item in the shop was an unaffordable luxury when he needed to save every penny for an uncertain future. His somber reflection was shattered when Choi Hyungjun began flicking his forehead, abruptly dismissing his question about the golf club by insisting it was nothing important. In a moment of quiet gravity, a young man named Kim Jae-hyun broke the silence, his concerned gaze fixed on an unseen companion as he asked if they remembered the day the monsters appeared. As Kim Jae-hyun was idly recalling that it had been the weekend, his mundane thought was violently shattered by the roaring appearance of monstrous, green-skinned creatures with glowing eyes. In a moment of pensive reflection, Kim Jae-hyun looked away, conceding the severity of the past event but voicing the faint hope that those who were at home might have survived. In the heart of the goblin-infested dungeon, Kim Jae-hyun explained their individual weakness, punctuating his point with a thunderous strike that sent blood spraying through the air. Just as they were dismissed for being small and weaker than an average man, three monstrous, goblin-like creatures with glowing yellow eyes burst forth from a crimson-tinged darkness. Against the blinding glare of a sun-drenched sky, a sea of silhouetted figures raised their steel, a powerful testament to the defiant belief that humanity could do the very same. In a moment of intense strategic focus, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze sharpened as he declared that their only viable path forward was to increase their numbers. Amidst the quiet devastation, Kim Jae-hyun's voice cut through the silence with an urgent plea, asking the man before him for help in finding any other survivors. In the quiet of his room, Kim Jae-hyun watched from his couch as a familiar blue holographic interface shimmered into existence above him, confirming his weary realization that it had risen again. In the quiet solitude of his room, Kim Jae-hyun gazed into a glowing holographic interface, clinging to the determined hope that expanding his influence might one day reunite him with his family. A piercing screech shattered the morning silence, violently jolting Kim Jae-hyun awake with his eyes wide in alarm. Hellish screeching shattered the pre-dawn silence, drawing a cautious Kim Jae-hyun to slide open his balcony door and confront the unseen disturbance. Peering outside, he could only stare in disbelief, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as a sharp gasp of confusion escaped him. The fragile quiet of the ruined cityscape shattered in an instant as Kim Jae-hyun and his allies found themselves ambushed, monstrous green-skinned figures emerging from the rubble to encircle their prey. Trapped in his high-rise apartment against a sky burning with an orange glow, Kim Jae-hyun stared down at the distant streets, tormented by the agonizing realization that he was utterly powerless to help them from up here. In a blur of motion that ripped through the silence, Kim Jae-hyun channeled his raw power into a single, glowing punch, his determined gaze fixed on an unseen foe. His glowing fist slammed into the jaw of a colossal, green-skinned monster, the resulting explosion of light momentarily silhouetting the stunned figures watching from the background. In an instant, the world seemed to warp around Kim Jae-hyun, his face a mask of pure shock as he struggled to comprehend the unbelievable words he had just heard. Battle began in a furious blur as Kim Jae-hyun launched himself into the air, his twin blades carving a deadly, sweeping arc through the chaos. The brutal assault began with a sickening double thump, sending two goblin-like creatures reeling as their screams were lost in a sudden spray of blood. An overwhelming sense of doom emanated from Kim Jae-hyun as he stood with his baseball bat poised above the three cowering creatures on the floor. As the sky burned a fierce orange, Kim Jae-hyun launched himself into a powerful dive, his focused descent cutting through the air like a meteor. It began with a sharp intake of breath as Kim Jae-hyun's world dissolved into a blur of motion, his eyes flaring with an intense, otherworldly light. The otherworldly energy from his eyes seemed to flow into his arms as he drew back a bowstring, his focus absolute amidst the chaotic speed. Amidst the quiet backdrop of an apartment complex, a woman in a purple tracksuit reacted with sudden alarm, urgently raising her crossbow towards an unseen threat. Gaze followed the crossbow's aim upward, landing on the source of her alarm, a lone figure dramatically silhouetted by a bright light on a distant balcony. With every muscle trembling in exertion, Kim Jae-hyun's arm shot upward, unleashing a deafening wave of power that strained his very being. That cataclysmic burst of energy drew the startled gaze of a woman across the city, her eyes wide with alarm as she stared up at the source of the disturbance. Morning's quiet shattered as Kim Jae-hyun, in a desperate cry for help, tumbled down a steep flight of stairs amidst the frantic ringing of his phone. The sharp ring of a bell shattered the quiet, prompting Kim Jae-hyun to turn by the staircase with the sudden realization that his visitor had arrived. With the click of the latch, Kim Jae-hyun opened his door, calmly inviting a man carrying a large cardboard box to step inside. Straining under the weight of a heavy package, a man named Kim Jae-hyun maneuvered himself through a doorway, offering a breathless word of thanks. In an instant, Kim Jae-hyun's ordinary day was violently interrupted as an unseen force slammed him back against a wall of glowing blue hexagons, the package in his hands nearly flying from his grasp. A sharp chime echoed as the digital interface fully materialized, framing his wide-eyed shock while the delivery person stood waiting just on the other side. His shock gave way to anxious confusion as he clutched the box, swallowing hard while questioning the sudden notice of insufficient qualification. The sudden glow of a holographic screen illuminated Kim Jae-hyun's pensive expression as he read the system's denial of entry, murmuring in dawning recognition of his insufficient qualifications. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension as Kim Jae-hyun, lost in contemplation, felt a single bead of sweat trace a path down his cheek. Surrounded by a shimmering cascade of blue hexagonal light, an ordinary man named Kim Jae-hyun recoiled in disgust from the simple cardboard box that had just materialized in his hands. In the tense quiet of their preparations, Kim Jae-hyun gratefully accepted a box filled with makeshift weapons, thanking his companion who confirmed they had brought everything they could find. With a quick tear of cardboard, Kim Jae-hyun crouched before the large, mysterious box, a sense of quiet anticipation filling the room. As an ominous beat underscored the silence, Kim Jae-hyun stood over the cold tiled floor, his gaze fixed on the two large knives and the toolbox that represented the grim task ahead. Then sat down and, with a soft swish, summoned a glowing blue interface, immediately commanding it to access storage for 5 bottles of water and 5 packs of noodles. The tense silence was suddenly broken by a soft hum as Kim Jae-hyun, remaining perfectly composed, conjured a brilliant blue holographic interface that swirled to life around him. His work on the interface was immediately interrupted as he was handed a cardboard box and instructed to leave the supplies by the first-floor entrance. Clutching a box of vital supplies, one survivor looked back in surprise at the mention of the first floor, as Kim Jae-hyun immediately questioned whether such a move was too risky. As the group prepared for the approaching night, the pragmatic Kim Jae-hyun offered a reassuring assessment, explaining with a calm gesture that his observations showed the goblins were primarily active during the day. In the encroaching darkness, a new resolve hardened Kim Jae-hyun's face as he acknowledged his mission. He had to bring those people in and win them over. Surrounded by the desperate, outstretched hands of the hungry, Kim Jae-hyun smirked over the box of food, confident they would all seek him out now that he controlled their survival. In a hallway thick with apprehension, Kim Jae-hyun pleaded with the other man, insisting there was a good reason they needed to bring the cardboard box down to the first floor. Wrapped in a moment of suffocating tension, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze drifted upward as he uttered a single, strained word of confirmation. In a quiet exchange, Kim Jae-hyun accepted a large rectangular object from an unseen figure, calmly acknowledging that the instructions didn't sound too difficult. In the quiet office, a young man clutching a cardboard box offered Kim Jae-hyun a deep, respectful bow, announcing that he would now be on his way. Encounter began with a quiet tension, as Kim Jae-hyun managed a polite but strained smile, offering his thanks while a single bead of sweat hinted at his underlying unease. Feeling a profound sense of gratitude and wishing he could offer something in return, Kim Jae-hyun focused his thoughts and reached forward, calling upon his system to open the quest window. Kim Jae-hyun's ordinary day came to an abrupt halt as he stared, wide-eyed and clutching a cardboard box, at a glowing blue interface that had just appeared before him, offering a bizarre promise of experience points for completing a task. Faced with a mysterious figure in a stark room, a bewildered Kim Jae-hyun voiced his suspicion that this was all some kind of game, a theory the man immediately confirmed by stating he was currently level 9. With a self-assured smirk, Kim Jae-hyun began to lay out the rules, explaining that leveling up would grant useful perks and rewards, and that he was counting on them to succeed. With sweat beading on his brow, a nervous Kim Jae-hyun took a steadying breath and gripped an unseen object, assuring himself that he could handle what was about to happen. That fragile confidence shattered instantly, and he swallowed hard in terror as an ominous green light washed over him from below, his grip tightening on the golf club. In the midst of a hurried morning, Kim Jae-hyun scrambled down the building's outer steps, an urgent phone conversation competing with the cumbersome box he carried. It began with a quiet sigh of relief as Kim Jae-hyun, balancing a cumbersome box and a golf club, scanned his chattering surroundings, thinking he just needed to find the right spot to set everything down. In a moment of high tension, a sweating Kim Jae-hyun glanced suddenly to the side, his eyes widening in confusion as he questioned what he was seeing. With a jolt of realization, his attention snapped toward the horizon where several figures stood in stark silhouette against the sunset. A paralyzing shudder seized Kim Jae-hyun as he stared up into the glowing yellow eyes of a grotesque monster, his terrified mind rejecting the horrifying reality looming behind him. The scene erupted in a blur of panicked motion as Kim Jae-hyun, clutching a large box and a golf club, careened around a corner in a desperate flight. The scene erupted into sudden motion as Kim Jae-hyun came tumbling headfirst out of a large cardboard box, his surprised shout lost in the clatter of objects scattering across the floor. On a stretch of barren, refuse-strewn earth, Kim Jae-hyun lay utterly defeated, a low groan of pain escaping him as the sound of deliberate footsteps drew ominously closer. Amidst the rising clamor, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to the desperate, internal struggle against an unseen force, his mind screaming at his uncooperative body to just move. Swallowed by an encroaching darkness, Kim Jae-hyun could only scream in terrified denial as an overwhelming presence loomed just out of sight. A sudden, blinding agony seized Kim Jae-hyun, twisting his features into a mask of torment as a raw scream tore from his throat. In a tense, silent moment, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to the sight of a hand looming just above him, his face a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. His shock was shattered as his teammates rushed into view, their faces a mixture of surprise and concern under the ominous red sky as one urgently asked if he was okay. In the quiet solitude of his room, Kim Jae-hyun's world tilted as a glowing blue interface materialized just before his eyes, prompting a gasp of pure disbelief. His initial shock quickly morphed into a chilling realization, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as he wondered if the impossible was truly happening before him. A swirling vortex of dark, mystical energy pulsed from a glowing orb on the ground, drawing the gaze of Kim Jae-hyun, whose eyes flared with power as he decided he had to investigate the ominous phenomenon. However, before he could move, the air itself seemed to tear open with a sharp "num" as a group of menacing figures advanced upon him, their leader brandishing a baseball bat that instantly replaced his resolve with terror. With their own supplies dwindling, Kim Jae-hyun and his companions looked on with tense urgency, realizing a neighbor's discarded noodles meant someone had food to spare and they desperately needed a plan. As he resolved to take action, the world around him began to warp and glitch, yet he stood firm, barefoot and bracing himself for what was to come. Bathed in the blue glow of a holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun pondered a critical new limitation. Citizenship was no longer something he could grant, but merely an offer he could extend. He then refined this understanding, realizing he could force citizenship upon those already within his home base, while outsiders could only be extended an offer. The blinding blue light erupted from his face, Kim Jae-hyun groaned in agony, struck by the terrible realization that this power could also be turned down. The world narrowed to the frantic beat of his own heart, a single bead of sweat betraying the silent panic screaming through Kim Jae-hyun's mind as he desperately wondered what to do. The quiet moment was shattered by a sudden realization, causing Kim Jae-hyun to gasp in wide-eyed shock. A moment of quiet reflection, Kim Jae-hyun's attention was suddenly seized, his head turning sharply from the dresser in response to an unseen disturbance. A look of sudden interest flashed in Kim Jae-hyun's eyes, and with an intrigued smirk, he considered that maybe he could give that a shot. Drawn by an urgent call, Kim Jae-hyun deliberately approached the intercom, its screen glowing with the worried face of the man on the other side. Pressed the answer button, greeting the frantic man on the screen before asking him to hold on for a moment. A sudden chime pierced the air as a glowing blue system window materialized, informing Hyungjin Choi of an active quest and offering a chance to reset it. Without hesitation, he confirmed his acceptance, his hand pressing into the glowing holographic system that flared to life across his face. A sly grin touched Kim Jae-hyun's lips as he gazed down at the holographic system panel before him, confidently requesting that the quest be reset. First challenge was delivered with a smug, confident grin, as Kim Jae-hyun issued the command to host a meal for 6 guests. A glowing blue interface suddenly materialized in the air, its honeycomb pattern pulsing as it announced that the quest had been updated. A translucent blue hologram of a surprised man flickered to life before Kim Jae-hyun, pointing a finger as it demanded to know what was happening, reminding him that he had just been given a new quest. In the dim light, a cunning smile touched Kim Jae-hyun's lips as he laid out the first step of his newly formed plan, suggesting they begin by inviting their targets to dinner. Before a glowing, hexagonal threshold guarded by a shadowy group, Kim Jae-hyun took a single, deliberate step forward, the air crackling with unspoken tension. The air crackled with a nervous chatter as Kim Jae-hyun and his group gathered before a shimmering blue portal, listening intently as a larger figure gestured towards the unknown that lay beyond. The tension finally broke as a relieved smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face, the man confirming with immense gratitude that an agreement had been reached. With a confident smirk illuminated by the glow of a holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun initiated a momentous directive, commanding the system to offer citizenship to all 6 of them. With the hum of a system activating, a holographic panel flared to life before him, listing the names of 6 individuals who had just been granted access to the 30th floor. A dramatic beat echoed through the tense crowd as Kim Jae-hyun appeared, a baseball bat slung over his shoulder and a smug grin promising violence. With a soft whoosh, a glowing blue system interface materialized, announcing a new milestone as the territory reached 10 citizens, who would now earn a 10% bonus to all experience points and loot. A sly smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as the glow of a system window confirmed his triumph, promising him bonus experience points and valuable loot. As a formidable new monster-raiding party strode confidently down the hallway, Kim Jae-hyun watched from below, inwardly celebrating their arrival as the perfect perk he had been waiting for. As Kim Jae-hyun reviewed his small population on a glowing blue interface, his eyes locked onto a single name, realizing with a start that one of his citizens was level 23, just as powerful as the Keelican he had struggled to bring down. As a blue light flashed across Kim Jae-hyun's focused eyes, a system interface appeared in his vision, confirming his suspicion that Dong Jianha had already awakened his powers. Standing barefoot with his arms crossed in quiet contemplation, Kim Jae-hyun resolved that while trust could be earned over time, he would immediately set the experience distribution rate to 70% for all of them. A grand, strategic vision unfolded in his mind. By assigning quests to others, their violent battles against monstrous beasts would become his personal auto-hunt, passively funneling all the loot and experience directly to him. With his eyes downcast in a moment of quiet contemplation, Kim Jae-hyun decided on a new path, realizing he must also find a way to turn those around him into allies. The thought struck him with a heavy thud. They were, after all, the only key he had to finding his family. A sudden chime resonated as a glowing blue system notification materialized in the air, confirming a welcome increase in Dong Jianha's trust level. This confirmation, however, sent a jolt of pure shock through Kim Jae-hyun, who stared wide-eyed in utter disbelief. Quiet was shattered for a weary Kim Jae-hyun as 2 glowing notifications suddenly swished into existence, announcing an inexplicable rise in trust from 2 citizens and leaving him to wonder what was happening. In a room charged with quiet anticipation, a nervous Kim Jae-hyun extended a welcoming hand, inviting the 5 visitors to enter as they gratefully accepted. The domestic quiet was broken by Kim Jae-hyun's concerned question about what was going on, but his partner, avoiding his gaze, simply promised to explain later and asked if he could prepare a meal for their guests. Scratching his head apologetically, Kim Jae-hyun admitted the misunderstanding was his fault, acknowledging her concern that she would now have to prepare everything from scratch. With her expression hardening into sharp focus, the woman affirmed that she would try to rush. As Kim Jae-hyun led his men in a deep, respectful bow, a woman's voice from just out of focus accepted their pledge, assuring them that the delay was acceptable before thanking them graciously. Weight of unspoken thought settled heavily on Kim Jae-hyun, his gaze falling downward in a moment of pensive silence. The air grew tense as one man began his inquiry about someone named Jae-hyun, prompting the nervous, bespectacled individual across from him to evasively claim he knew little about the man either. Faced with a tense interrogation by an armed group blocking his doorway, Kim Jae-hyun evasively claimed that he knew nothing about his neighbor beyond the simple fact that the man lived next door. Quiet intensity settled over Kim Jae-hyun, his eyes fixed on something just out of view, his expression a mask of calm observation. Around a low wooden table, a diverse group of individuals stood in quiet observation, one man with a baseball bat noting that their subject was quite an interesting guy. A look of concern crossed Kim Jae-hyun's face as he touched his collar, the troubling thought surfacing that the other man must have awakened his powers as well. Unzipping his jacket to reveal a hidden bounty of snacks, Kim Jae-hyun quietly acknowledged that this was an incredible power indeed. But that moment of quiet pride was fleeting, his expression hardening with anxiety as he insisted to his companions that they had to make a good impression on him, no matter what. As a tear welled in his eye, Kim Jae-hyun felt overwhelmed by the thought of an ability that could miraculously provide food, water, and power, making his own seem utterly insignificant in comparison. Pushing aside his overwhelming feelings of inadequacy, he regained his composure as a gracious host, explaining that the rice would take a while and offering them the chance to shower in the meantime. His offer was met with immediate, wide-eyed disbelief, as the two women stammered in excitement, questioning if they could truly take showers there. A cold sweat broke out on Kim Jae-hyun's face as the horrifying realization dawned: if the building had power, then his enemy controlled its very infrastructure. With water droplets dotting his face, Kim Jae-hyun closed his eyes in sheer contentment, confirming that they indeed had hot water. Amidst a comical surge of purple energy, two young women reacted with exaggerated shock, one exclaiming that the sudden appearance of hot water was, once again, all thanks to Jae-hyun. Leading them on a tour, Jae-hyun explained that with bathrooms in both the living room and bedroom, they could shower at the same time, an offer that elicited a deeply grateful bow from one woman and an awestruck gasp from the other. In a room thick with tension, Kim Jae-hyun wondered aloud if the mysterious man was also an awakened, prompting Dong Jian to grimly speculate that if so, his ability must be on an entirely different level than his own. As his companion patted him on the shoulder with a menacing grin, beginning to boast about what his bat could do, Kim Jae-hyun furiously cut him off, insisting they were supposed to impress their target, not assault him. Realizing where the conversation was heading, his expression turned grave as he pleaded with them to do him a favor and avoid any reckless actions. A strained laugh escaped Kim Jae-hyun as he finally conceded the point, his exasperation clear as he attempted to move the conversation forward. Gathering his small group in the tense quiet, Kim Jae-hyun laid out their simple yet critical plan. They would ask for food, take as much as they could get, and he warned them with grim finality not to mess it up. The weight of his warning still hanging in the air, he looked away and gave a terse, final confirmation. A sly smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he met their gaze, confidently assuring them it would be done. Startled by a firm hand gripping his shoulder, a flustered Kim Jae-hyun stammered that he understood and apologized for his distraction as sweat beaded on his temple. The distressed Dong Jian began to blame himself for the recent events. Kim Jae-hyun gently placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, insisting that none of it was his fault. Internally, however, a bead of sweat formed on his temple as he was consumed by his own regret, wishing he had never insisted on having that housewarming party. As a hand on his shoulder urged him to turn, Kim Jae-hyun offered a strained smile and insisted he was fine, claiming he had wanted to be at the party all along. In the tense confines of a narrow hallway, Dong Jian laid out a plan to secure food before seeking refuge at Jae-hyun's grandmother's house, a suggestion Jae-hyun readily accepted with thanks. In the quiet stillness of a dimly lit room, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze locked forward, his expression hardening with serious intent. Sweat beaded on his temple as he winced, his eyes squeezing shut with the grim realization that it was too late. From the depths of an ethereal darkness, a terrifying sense of doom manifested as countless shadowy figures with glowing red eyes began to emerge, their spectral forms commanded by two colossal, menacing faces that loomed above them all. Despite the encroaching horror, Kim Jae-hyun gritted his teeth through the strain, reassuring his companion that they were close and just needed to hang in there. Amidst a growing sense of unease, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes widened with apprehension as he protested that while he understood the situation, something should have already happened by now. Tense silence shattered with a sharp clack, drawing Kim Jae-hyun's wary attention to a violent confrontation unfolding just feet away. Deep within the silent building, a door swung slowly ajar, its ominous creak shattering the stillness. As Kim Jae-hyun stared at the baseball clutched tightly in his hand, a sudden and inexplicable shock registered on his face, leaving him utterly bewildered. Air grew heavy with anticipation the moment Kim Jae-hyun appeared in the doorway, his weary gaze and quiet intensity immediately signaling that something profound had just begun. The scene opened on a determined young man, Kim Jae-hyun, whose sudden offer to help was met with immediate, unspoken suspicion. In a room thick with apprehension, 4 young men stood sweating, one clutching a baseball bat as they all considered that their subject might just be the man they were looking for. The air hung thick with tension as Kim Jae-hyun watched a figure emerge in the sunlit doorway, a silent, desperate hope flickering among the survivors that this newcomer had finally come to save them from their nightmare. The room was dead silent. 7 figures sat motionless. The air crackled with unspoken tension. A critical meeting was about to begin. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the first word. She offered a flustered apology. Her smile couldn't hide her nerves. The table was a little small, she said, but her kindness was obvious. Woman just laughed, waving his worries away. She insisted it was their fault. They were the ones who barged in. Her smile tried to ease the tension, but Jae-hyun was a coiled spring of pure anxiety. He couldn't relax. The man beside her said nothing. He just watched it all unfold. Wait was finally over. A steaming meal appeared. He served it with a huge, welcoming smile. Food was on the table. A deep blush spread across her face. She could barely meet his gaze. Her voice was a shy, hopeful whisper. "It's not much," she stammered out. "I really hope it's okay." She nervously tucked a strand of hair back. She was desperate for his approval. A feast fit for a king appeared. It was a perfect breakfast spread. Steaming rice sat next to golden eggs. This wasn't just a meal. It was an offering. A masterpiece made with absolute love. The entire table practically sparkled. His chopsticks moved with reverence. He gently lifted a single piece of tamagoyaki. But this was no ordinary dish. The egg pulsed with a warm, golden light. It was literally glowing. This wasn't just food, it was a masterpiece. Chopsticks froze mid-air. The plate before her was impossible. It wasn't just food. It was a masterpiece. A golden tamagoyaki radiated pure light. This thing, it glimmered with divine perfection. She was completely stunned. Her shock shattered into pure ecstasy. "What are you talking about?" she roared. This was absolutely incredible. Drool dripped from her chin. This wasn't just a meal. This was a feast. Woman thanked Jae-hyun with pure relief. Without his ingredients, the meal was a disaster. She almost served them just rice and tangerines. A wave of stunned silence washed over the table. A sharp ding echoed in his mind. A blue window flickered into view. It was her stats. Haiwan Choi. Her trust in him had hit a solid 50. She was only level 5, but this was a breakthrough. Their bond was getting stronger. Jae-hyun reeled in disbelief. How did she manage it? She hit a trust level of 50, even before Hyeongjin. This was completely unexpected. At last, a moment of peace. The team gathered around a hearty meal. A cheerful voice cut through the air. "Enjoy your meal," they all cried. For a brief second, everything felt normal. It was a calm before the inevitable storm. They finally sat down for a meal. It was absolutely heavenly. Jae-hyun devoured his food. He shoveled it in like a starving man. This was the taste of pure victory. Every single bite was pure bliss. They ate like there was no tomorrow. He took a bite. A flavor explosion rocked his world. His eyes shot open in disbelief. It was pure, delicious shock. A single word escaped his lips. Wow. This dish was something else entirely. The first bite was absolute heaven. This omelet was unbelievable. It wasn't just good. It was restaurant quality. He exploded with joy, shouting his praise. This was a meal to remember. A warm memory surfaced. It was his mother. Her smile was pure kindness. She'd made his favorite meal. She just hoped he would like it. He could only say her name. "Mommy." A tiny voice piped up from the floor. She wanted an omelet too, but her simple demand was cut short. Her eyes widened in sudden confusion. Something was terribly wrong. Jae-hyun's heart was completely broken. Tears welled up, blurring his vision. A quiet sniffle escaped his lips. A gentle hand rested on his head. A soft voice promised to fix it all. They would make him a new one. But he had to wait until the guests left. The comfort felt so far away. Suddenly, a friendly voice called her name. It was him, Kim Jae-hyun. He was smiling warmly, offering her food. He wanted her to come sit with them. Seo-yeon froze, totally caught off guard. It was finally time to eat. He let out a triumphant roar. The little girl's eyes went wide. She exploded with pure happiness. Her whole world was in that bowl. He gently lifted a piece of egg. His voice was filled with warmth. He offered it to her like a treasure. "Okay, Seo-yeon," he urged. "Say ah." She stuffed her cheeks without a care. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. The world outside just melted away. This moment was pure, blissful heaven. A hearty laugh filled the room. The smell of a huge feast was in the air. Jae-hyun spotted her standing there. With a wide grin, he called out, "Seo-yeon, come eat with us." He insisted there was plenty to share. Jae-hyun's hands grew slick with sweat. He was completely cornered. He had no other choice. His voice trembled with pure anxiety. "Well, if you say so," he stammered. Jae-hyun and his partner beamed with excitement. Their faces split into massive, joyful smiles. He practically roared with enthusiasm. They were more than happy to join in. He found a moment of quiet, a chance to finally eat. The world around him faded away. He was completely focused on the meal. This wasn't just food, it was fuel. He was recharging for what came next. The silence was a heavy blanket. He ate with intense purpose. Every bite was a stolen victory. He took a slow, deliberate bite. A wave of pure relief washed over him. It had been ages since he'd eaten this well. This single meal felt like absolute heaven. A hot meal was waiting for him. A small note rested on the bowl. It was a simple, heartfelt message. For my son, written with a heart. It was pure, unconditional love. Jae-hyun's chopsticks froze mid-air. A sudden, cold worry washed over him. He just hoped they were all safe. A tiny voice cut through the quiet. The little one rubbed their sleepy eyes. A huge yawn escaped their lips. They looked up at their mom, completely drained. "Mommy, I'm sleepy." Her gentle gaze was full of love. Day finally came to a close. Time for a well-deserved rest. She scooped up the little girl with a smile. A warm, loving embrace filled the room. Everyone agreed it was time for bed. He took a single, careful step. His eyes darted around the room. Every shadow was a threat. His focus was absolute. He missed nothing. The air in the room turned heavy. The pleasantries were officially over. A serious voice cut through the silence. "Then, let's continue." It was time to get down to business. Everyone's focus snapped back to the table. A new question sliced through the tension. A simple, logical question. It hit Jae-hyun like a ton of bricks. "Your grandma's house was nearby." The voice was cold. "So why didn't you go to her?" He flinched. A bead of sweat ran down his face. He was completely cornered. He finally revealed the true cause. His expression was dead serious. It wasn't a curse or a disease. It was the goblins. Goblins? It couldn't be them. But Jae-hyun's face told the whole story. He looked utterly drained. His eyes were sunk deep with exhaustion. With a tired, grim nod, he confirmed the nightmare. It was them. The apartment's parking lot was their perfect den. A low growl echoed through the concrete. He had finally found their nest. They had settled in, making it their home. A whole pack of them. And they were watching his every move. The team finally pinpointed the next hive. An underground parking lot. But the news was grim. Thousands of them festered in the darkness. This wasn't a fight. It was a suicide mission. Jae-hyun's face grew serious. He finally revealed the weakness in his power. His ability had a fatal flaw. It only protected down to the 30th floor. This was their critical vulnerability. It's how the goblins got inside. They swarmed in through the underground parking. Jae-hyun's voice was grim. He laid out the chilling truth. All the apartment exits were connected. They all funneled into the parking lot. It was a perfectly designed cage. That's why they couldn't leave. They were completely, utterly trapped. Jae-hyun leaned in, his voice steady. He revealed the final piece of the puzzle. There was a weakness in their fortress. A small, hidden alley in the corner. That was their golden ticket out. The plan was simple. Sneak through it. Cold sweat dripped down his face. His voice shook with pure terror. He revealed they saw something in that dungeon. Something far worse than just goblins. The question hung in the air. What could be more dangerous? Terrifying shadow loomed over him. He wasn't sure what it was. It looked like a wolf, maybe a bear. A monstrous presence blotted out all hope. Its eyes glowed with pure malice. A wave of absolute terror washed over him. His body was frozen solid. He was staring death in the face. A nightmare of teeth and shadow hunted us. We sprinted for our very lives. The neon city became a total blur. Pure terror fueled our every single step. And that's how we managed to get away. His mind raced, trying to decode the message. A wolf or a bear? The words echoed in his head. This wasn't a choice. It felt like a threat. A cold sweat trickled down his temple. The pressure was on. He remembered the encounter vividly. It was pitch black. He couldn't make out a clear shape. A cold terror gripped his heart. Something was in the darkness with them. Unseen things began to loom from the shadows. A sinister purple glow pulsed all around him. He couldn't see what it was, but he could feel it. He could feel its hunger. Grim reality settled in. A confrontation was coming. There was no escaping this one. He had to face it. He simply nodded in agreement. A cold sweat dripped down his temple. All his confidence was gone. He couldn't see a single path to victory. He finally admitted the grim truth. But we don't really have a shot. Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed in suspicion. He wasn't buying a word of it. His sharp glance cut through the air. There was no good reason for this. He just had to ask. Why not? The mood was grim. Their weapons were crude, just arrows and baseballs. But now, even those were running low. A heavy silence fell over them. Hope was fading fast. They were losing their will to fight. New voice cut through the tension. It was Kim Jae-hyun. He claimed he could solve their problem. He held out his hand, asking for their gear. He needed the bow, the arrow, and the baseball. Someone stepped forward. They offered him his weapons. A bow and a single arrow. But also, a baseball? What was this test? He clutched the baseball tightly. A blue window flickered into existence. It offered to register the ball. This was his chance. He accepted without a thought. A soft sound confirmed his choice. A new interface pulsed with blue light. A new power was right at his fingertips. His crossbow lay forgotten on the table. This was far more important. With a surge of pure focus, he reached out. His fingers stretched towards the unknown. He just had to touch it. A sharp ding echoed in his mind. The system offered him a new weapon. A good quality recurve bow. But this power came with a staggering cost. Over 1.5 million won. That was $1,000. His jaw dropped at the insane price tag. The system simply asked, "Register it?" Jae-hyun's face was a cold mask. His mind raced with calculations. The powerful bow felt heavy in his hands. He finally gave a single, chilling reply. "Sure." Sharp voice cut through the air. "Do you all know how to use a bow?" The question hung over them. A wave of confusion washed over the students. They exchanged nervous glances. The silence was absolutely deafening. Clearly, nobody had a clue. This was a test they weren't ready for. His mind was set. A new plan was already in motion. He needed more firepower. He'd purchase 5 sets of bows and arrows. It was a start. Voice cut through the silence. "Start practicing. You'll need it." Holographic bows materialized before his eyes. An entire arsenal, just for him. His real training was about to begin. The old Jae-hyun was gone. Ding! A system alert popped up. A list of names scrolled by. Their trust in him shot through the roof. His eyes went wide. This was totally insane. Jae-hyun gazed at the glowing firepower. A spark of hope ignited in his chest. This was a real chance. Thanks to that man's help, he could finally save his grandmother. The team was thrilled. New bows meant they could fight from a distance. Goblins would fall so much faster. No more life-threatening runs to retrieve arrows. But Jae-hyun just scoffed. He didn't need their primitive weapons. He had his own way of dealing with things. Jae-hyun suddenly stopped everyone. He raised a hand. A cold, tactical look crossed his face. He had a plan. Before anything else, they needed some pest control. The area had to be cleared of all goblins first. A bead of sweat slid down his face. But his mind was made up. The fear was gone, replaced by grim resolve. He was all in, no matter the cost. His voice was tight with anticipation. "I agree. So when do we do this?" Jae-hyun's mind was made up. There was no time to waste. His stare was pure steel. "We're doing this tomorrow." The others couldn't believe it. So soon? His decision was absolute. There was no room for debate. He heard their hesitation, but his resolve only hardened. Yes, the sooner the better. He acknowledged their doubts for a moment, but his decision was final. There was no room for buts. The team gathered, their faces grim. The air crackled with grim determination. One man's voice cut through the tension. He made an unbreakable vow. They would save Byongo's grandmother, and they'd do it by the end of tomorrow. He had to smile. It was an order. A cold sweat dripped down his temple. His lips pulled back into a painful grimace. This wasn't joy. This was the face of pure, chilling dread. Jae-hyun's mind short-circuited. He stared down in disbelief. A cold sweat dripped down his temple. This made absolutely no sense. How was any of this even possible? Then, an idea struck him. A flash of pure, tactical genius. A sly grin spread across his face. He had the perfect plan. They would use a decoy. A sly smirk crept onto his face. The gears in his mind clicked into place. A brilliant, devious plan was born. They were going to use a decoy. The team gathered, their focus absolute. An arsenal of bows covered the table. This was their key to victory, or their ticket to the grave. Jae-hyun sat back, watching intently. He needed to choose the right weapon. Their very lives depended on this choice. The tension was suffocating. Sweat dripped down their faces. A desperate plan began to form. He stroked his chin in deep thought. A whisper finally broke the silence. It could work. Cold sweat trickled down his temple. His mind was a frantic mess. He tried to calm his nerves. This plan just had to work. Everything depended on it. There was no room for failure. A sudden chime rang out. The system declared his success. Hyungjin Choi's quest was finally over. But victory wasn't free. 30,000 won vanished from his account. His mind went completely blank. The victory felt hollow. He stared into empty space. Something was definitely wrong. A single, confused thought echoed. System alert flashed. The quest was complete. But then, a new message appeared. His jaw hit the floor. 30,000 won was gone. Just like that. Wait, quests cost money? A cold sweat trickled down his face. This wasn't part of the plan. Not at all. He had no idea. But then, an idea clicked. This wasn't just a cost. It was a powerful investment. If he had enough cash to spare, he could level up the citizens themselves. He could make them unbelievably strong. His mind raced with the possibilities. Just then, his phone rang. Jae-hyun weighed his options carefully. He had a trump card up his sleeve, but now was not the time to play it. He would save this power for later. He'd wait until it was absolutely necessary. With a resolute nod, the decision was made. Notification pinged his senses. Hyungjin's trust just skyrocketed. It blasted past the 50-point mark. A new bond was suddenly forged. The loyalty system was now unlocked. This wasn't just trust anymore. This was the start of true allegiance. A system alert dinged. The registration was a success. Hyungjin Choi was officially his. A status window flashed open. Level 9. Loyalty, a respectable 62. His new vassal was ready. He just needed a mission. System window blazed into existence. His gaze was cold and unyielding. The time for hesitation was over. He issued a single, powerful command. Register Hyungjin Choi as a vassal. He was about to claim his new subordinate. A deafening roar of energy suddenly ripped through the air. The immense pressure slammed into Kim Jae-hyun, stopping him cold. His eyes shot wide open in a mix of pure shock and terror. A cold sweat instantly beaded on his forehead as his mind went blank. He was utterly paralyzed by this sudden, overwhelming power. Jae-hyun suddenly stopped. A faint blue light pulsed around him. He stared at his hands, bewildered. Something just flashed out of thin air. A cold sweat ran down his brow. What was happening to him? Just like that, the system roared to life. He'd named his first official vassal. A huge reward popped up. He unlocked the summon vassal skill. He could now teleport his followers straight to his home base. This changed everything. A new power surged through Hyungjin. His stats flashed before his eyes. Level 20. He was now the first vassal. His awakened ability was simple, brutal, the strength of a gorilla, a passive skill. He possessed the raw, untamed power of a beast. A primal aura of purple rage exploded from him. New message flashed into existence. It revealed two insane new abilities. The first vassal was a total game changer. Any monster it killed, double XP, double rewards. His leveling speed was about to break the sound barrier. And his home base? It just became a fortress. He could summon his powerful new vassal right on his doorstep. He scanned his system window. But wait, what was this? A glowing plus button appeared. He had no clue what it did. Curiosity burned inside him. His finger moved on its own. With a quick tap, he pressed it. Sudden ding pierced the silence. A blue window materialized in front of him. An insane offer appeared. He could level up Hyungjin Choi. But the price was staggering. 1,000,000 won. A huge gamble was on the table. His world just shattered. A number burned into his vision. 1,000,000 won. A strangled groan escaped his lips. This was an impossible sum. Jae-hyun's head was spinning. He clutched his face in total confusion. What just happened? He stammered. He tried to shake off the daze. I am fine, he insisted, pushing past his own pain. His real worry was for her. But how are you feeling? A wild jolt of energy shot through him. He felt completely supercharged. A brilliant blue aura flared to life. His arms bulged with raw, newfound power. He stared at his fists in utter disbelief. He had to ask himself if this was his own doing. The answer was a definitive yes. A jolt of pure energy surged through him. His body glowed with an impossible blue light. He stared down, completely stunned. The years were literally melting away. A gasp escaped his lips. He felt a decade younger. A slow, knowing grin crept across his face. He had them right where he wanted them. Everything was falling perfectly into place. Jae-hyun leaned in, a confident smirk on his face. He casually held a crossbow. Then he dropped a bombshell. He wanted Hyungjin to join the mission. Hyungjin was completely blindsided. He couldn't believe his ears. A new territory bonus just dropped. It was a massive advantage. Every citizen now got a 10% experience boost. But for his loyal vassals, they received double. Hyungjin was about to level up at a blistering pace. He was given a death sentence. The command was simple and brutal. Kill as many monsters as you can. Jae-hyun's hands trembled on the bow. An arrow was already knocked. He could only whisper one word. Okay. A massive grin split his face. His eyes were squeezed shut with glee. He issued a confident, chilling challenge. He taunted them, I'll be counting on you. The challenge was accepted. Jae-hyun and his team moved in. They stepped onto the first floor. An overwhelming dread filled the air. Every shadow felt like a threat. Weapons at the ready, they crept forward. The hunt had officially begun. His partner was terrified. The first floor looked like a death trap, a total wreck. He pleaded with Dong Jian. Did they really have to go in there? But Dong Jian's resolve was absolute. He remembered Jae-hyun's words. They had to check every single floor. Their job was to rescue people. Jaehyun's first order was crystal clear. Their mission was brutally simple. Find every survivor in this hellhole. Send them all to the 30th floor. That was the only safe zone. That was the only path to survival. Jaehyun's plan was brutally simple. This wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. He would lure all the goblins into the building. Then, he'd kill them all at once. One single, decisive strike. The leader's voice cut through the gloom. His orders were simple but grim. They had to find every survivor. No one could be left behind. Their mission was to send them up. He made sure they understood. There was no room for failure. The group stood ready. Jaehyun hefted the bat onto his shoulder. A vicious grin spread across his face. The message was crystal clear. The thugs cowered, their bravado gone. Okay, we get it, they screamed. His point was made without a single swing. Jaehyun's voice finally cut the silence. He barked the order to move out. They would start with Unit 101. But he gave a chilling warning. Stay sharp. Goblins could be anywhere. A team stepped into the darkness. They were armed for a war. But the fight was already over. A sea of blood painted the floor. An overwhelming sense of doom filled the air. Whatever happened here, they were too late. A figure emerged from the shadows. His face was a void of darkness. But his eyes, they were twin suns of raw power. In his hand, a terrifying orb pulsed with energy. The elite squad flinched back in horror. A wave of pure dread washed over them. Pure terror gripped them. An unseen hand silenced their screams. Jaehyun's mind reeled in horror. He tried to cry out, but it was useless. A heavy thud echoed through the room. Jaehyun's terror hardened into pure resolve. He refused to die here. This place was a tomb. He turned to his shaken companion. His voice cut through the silence. Let's get out of here. They had to run. Now. His hand closed around the pipe. The metal felt cold, but his blood was boiling. Knuckles white, veins popping. This was the point of no return. He was ready for a war. Silence was deafening. Blood splattered the shattered window. They stared out at the carnage below. This was only the beginning. A cold, grim resolve settled in. The battle had just begun. Despair crashed down on him. All their efforts were for nothing. The first floor was completely lost. He roared in pure, unadulterated frustration. It was a total, crushing failure. There was no time to rest. Sweat dripped down his temple. The tension was suffocating. But his voice was pure steel. He gave the order. They were heading to the second floor. The room erupted in pure chaos. Faces twisted in absolute horror. A wave of dread washed over everyone. A choked scream tore through the silence. A sharp pain shot through his body. He winced, sweat beading on his brow. This was bad. Crap, he hissed. They needed to move. Now, let's head to the third floor, he commanded. They tore through the school's dark halls. It was a silent, desperate rush. Shadows clung to every corner. Their footsteps echoed with grim purpose. There was no turning back now. He raced to the apartment, his heart pounding. He hammered on the door with pure desperation. Hello? Anybody home? He screamed. He had to get inside, and he had to do it now. A polite knock, then another. But patience was a virtue they lacked. The knocking became a thunderous assault. Bam! The door splintered from its frame. Jaehyun burst in, his eyes burning with rage. He found his target instantly. A brutal fist sent the man crashing down. He grabbed him, fury in his voice. Anyone in there? He roared. A heavy presence fell over them all. Kim Jaehyun looked down. His cold stare cut through the air. The students froze in their tracks. One girl began to tremble uncontrollably. Pure terror gripped her heart. She couldn't even meet his gaze. Then, his expression shattered. His eyes shot open in disbelief. A cold sweat dripped down his face. The hunter had just seen a monster. He was utterly paralyzed by fear. Jaehyun hammered on the door. His fists landed with a deafening crash. Anybody there? He roared into the dark. We're here to rescue you. He slammed his fist again and again. But only a dead silence answered his call. A slow creak echoed through the hall. Jaehyun froze, his heart pounding. A single door was slightly ajar. Pure darkness seeped from the crack. It was an invitation. Or a trap. He had to know what was inside. Door cracked open just a sliver. A terrified man peeked out. He was an absolute wreck. Sweat dripped down his tired face. His voice trembled with shock. Really? He whispered. Are you actually here to help me? A tiny spark of hope lit his eyes. A cold sweat dripped down his face. He plastered on a nervous smile. His heart was about to explode. He finally choked out the single word, yes. That one answer sealed his fate. Sweat dripped down his strained face. His throat felt like sandpaper. He was completely drained of energy. With what little strength he had left, he rasped out a desperate plea. He begged for just a single drop of water. He had the vials. 2 tiny, precious bottles. He tucked them deep inside the bag. A quick zip sealed them away. The plan was now in motion. hand suddenly shot out of the dark. It offered him a bottle of water. "Here you go," a voice said cheerfully. Jae-hyun froze, completely stunned. Who was this person? He couldn't believe it. An offer of help? For nothing? He eyed the stranger suspiciously. Were they rescuers from the outside? The man explained the truth. They were residents, just like him. They came to rescue him. He offered an escape, a place safer than this hellhole, an invitation to join them, a chance at survival. Safe place? In this hell? A cold sweat dripped down his face. His eyes locked onto something. His mind went completely blank. It was impossible. It just couldn't be real. Kim Jae-hyun and his team stood ready. They faced their next great challenge. The air crackled with silent tension. Every nerve was on fire. This was it. The calm before the storm. There was no turning back now. His hand closed around the cold steel. A sharp clack echoed in the silence. He twisted the latch without hesitation. The door was about to open. Sweat dripped down his face. All eyes were locked on him. The pressure was immense. He gripped the weapon tight. He poured every bit of his will into one single, desperate swing. The blade sliced through the air with a vicious roar. The archer had to eat his words. He was sorry for ever doubting him. He offered his hand in respect. The name was Jeongsu Hong. A new ally was made. A new face stepped forward with a confident smile. He introduced himself as Dong Jian-ha. His handshake was firm and welcoming, but the massive bow on his back said it all. This was no ordinary hunter. He was a true warrior. The orders were barked with cold precision. Get them to the 30th floor. Now, the mission was clear. Protect the girls. Regroup immediately. Jae-hyun's eyes hardened with resolve. He gave a sharp nod. Okay, got it. His heart stopped. The 30th floor? He couldn't believe it. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to escape. Weren't they going to the ground floor? Pure panic seized him. A cold sweat dripped down his face. What was happening? Footsteps finally echoed from outside. Jae-hyun leaned back, completely smug. He shot a triumphant look at his father. See? He told him they'd send backup. Helicopters, the works. But his father's face was pure dread. He just laughed, wiping away some sweat. No, it was nothing sinister like that. Her smile was disarmingly kind. A hot meal was waiting for them. A warm shower was ready upstairs. This place was a safe haven. But the word showers sent her into total ecstasy. Her entire being lit up with pure joy. Jae-hyun stared in absolute disbelief. Showers? Was she being serious right now? He was completely baffled by her intense reaction. A wide smile spread across his face. This was pure, absolute bliss. The warm water felt incredible. He let out a sigh of pure contentment. In a flash, he was gone. He exploded forward with raw determination. The air itself seemed to shatter. He was closing the distance instantly. A girl blocked his path. She stepped right on his foot. A huge grin spread across her face. Come on, Dad, she urged him. Let's head up already. He let out a weary groan. These kids were draining him dry. Fine, I'm coming, he grumbled. With a heavy sigh, he took a step. A sudden chime echoed in his mind. The system just gave an update. His population had officially hit 40. The city was growing, and fast. A sharp ding echoed. A new message flashed into view. The system announced a massive bonus. Citizens now earn 90% more experience. They get 90% more loot. The rules of the game just changed. The system flared to life. His citizens granted a massive 90% experience boost. And now, he had 40 of them. His power was rapidly growing. Jae-hyun was led to a house full of children and elders. A woman warmly welcomed the newbie. He stared in surprise. This was their safe haven. Order echoed through the hall. The young people were forced to stay behind, completely shut out. Left waiting, Kim Jae-hyun watched silently. The final count was announced. Only 40 people made it. A cold dread filled Jae-hyun. He looked up in shock, asking if that could really be all of them. Grim report arrived. They'd swept 29 floors, but so many were outside when disaster struck. Jae-hyun accepted the heavy news, thankful for their work. Suddenly, an intense power surged through Jae-hyun. His eye flared with a mysterious purple light for just a moment. A hidden ability was awakening. Suddenly, Jae-hyun's eyes flared with a blinding light. He unleashed the ultimate eye. A storm of dark, sinister energy erupted from his body. Suddenly, a terrifying power awakened. His eye blazed with a violet light, pulsing with otherworldly energy. This was no longer human. Whoosh! A dark aura exploded around Kim Jae-hyun. His face was a mask of pure, cold focus. He was awakening a terrifying new power. A chilling, single word escaped his lips. Good. The other man froze, his eyes wide with pure terror. The simple word sealed his fate. Confident smirk crept across his face. He declared the goblin hunt was moving to its second phase. The real game had just begun. The air grew heavy with tension. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the silence. demanding their full attention. The mission was about to begin. Expression hardened, arms crossed with determination. Kim Jae-hyun broke the silence, his voice firm. Here's the plan. The time for waiting was over. The plan was revealed. Their mission: draw every goblin from the underground into the open. The team listened, tense. This was a death trap. A holographic plan glowed before him. Kim Jae-hyun's voice was cold and decisive as he announced their entry point. The mission was on. A voice demanded an answer. But Jae-hyun, trembling with fear, posed a horrifying question. What if they had horribly underestimated the goblin threat? A cold sweat dripped down his face. Jae-hyun voiced a terrible new fear. The very goblins they killed could now trap them on this level forever. A sinister smile spread across her face. Don't worry, she promised, I can kill them all. They were armed and ready for a complete slaughter. Reluctantly agreed, sweat dripping down his face. And then, a monstrous power erupted from his core with a deafening kraa. Suddenly, his head snapped around. Kim Jae-hyun turned, instantly on alert. The woman beside him froze, her eyes wide with utter shock. What did he see? Suddenly, two grotesque green monsters with glowing red eyes lunged from the darkness. Their claws were out, their hunger palpable. The hunt had begun. Wish! Her eyes burned with focus as she let the arrow fly. It streaked through the air like a comet, a brilliant trail of light seeking its mark. A sickening thud shattered the silence. Three monstrous goblins descended in a blur. They lunged with terrifying speed in a brutal, coordinated ambush. Kim Jae-hyun's eyes blazed with blue light. He let out a furious roar, bringing his weapon crashing down on the monster and screaming, "Take that!" With glowing blue eyes, Jae-hyun swung with all his might. The bat connected with a sickening crack. Blood exploded from the point of impact. Last monster collapsed. Flop. Jae-hyun stood in the silence, the lone victor over the bloody carnage. The brutal fight was finally over. He was called out for forgetting the bow. A cold dread washed over him as his eyes went wide. Oh no! He'd made a huge mistake. Suddenly, a shout pierced the air. Look! A woman pointed frantically, her face a mask of shock. The men behind her whipped around. What did she see? A storm of energy erupted. The monster shrieked as its very flesh dissolved into nothingness. The bodies weren't just dying, they were vanishing. Pure shock washed over him as his mind reeled. A cold sweat dripped down his face. He desperately thought, is this one of his abilities, too? Jae-hyun's voice boomed with confidence. This is great. He took the lead, a smirk on his face. Down they went, into the first basement level. And, steady footsteps broke the silence. Kim Jae-hyun advanced with a sly smirk, radiating pure confidence. He was ready to make his move. Suddenly, the system exploded with alerts around him. Ding! 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 The timing was perfect, and a flood of notifications confirmed his success. It wasn't planned, but it was perfect. They thought he was answering in real time. He chugged his water, a desperate attempt to look calm. Jae-hyun stared at the glowing screen, his face a mask of pure shock. What? He cried out. It's barely been a few hours. The system's speed was impossible. Jae-hyun mused on growing his power with more vassals. It was good news. Suddenly, his calm broke. A new notification stunned him into silence. Reviewed by Ongo's stats. Loyalty was high, but trust was dangerously low. The system offered a choice: give him a quest, or expel him forever. Jae-hyun's mind reeled in utter shock. 88? He couldn't believe it. How was his loyalty already so high? This was impossible. He tried to convince himself it was a good thing. But a single drop of sweat and an intense gaze revealed his true anxiety. Something felt wrong. A wicked grin spread across his face. He knew the perfect moment to act. He declared he had the perfect time to register his new vassal. The trap was set. A desperate struggle for the bow erupted. Thwack! But then, a radiant power burst forth. A glowing archer appeared, ready to end the chaos. Wham! Kim Jae-hyun channeled all his fury into one devastating blow. A torrent of raw, blue energy slammed down with incredible force. Shwum! A torrent of blue lightning erupted from Jae-hyun's body. He stared, wide-eyed in shock, as the raw power surged uncontrollably through him. Suddenly, a blinding blue flash erupted. Lightning cracked the air. Everyone screamed in pure panic, their minds reeling. What was happening? A terrifying roar split the air. The huge, tusked beast unleashed a storm of blue lightning. Its foe was caught, writhing in pure, electric agony. Suddenly, a piercing shriek. A blinding blue light erupted from nowhere, engulfing everything. An immense, raw power was unleashed in a single flash. Light faded into an oppressive darkness. Suddenly, a sea of glowing red eyes opened, glaring with pure malice. They were being watched by an army. The creatures scattered in absolute terror. They shrieked and flinched, scrambling over each other in a wave of pure chaos. Something was coming. Pure terror seized Jae-hyun. His face contorted in a desperate plea. With every ounce of his being, he screamed a single, soul-shattering word, run. Desperate sprint. Kim Jae-hyun exploded forward with inhuman speed, his entire being focused on one goal. He had to escape, no matter the cost. A glowing arrow flew straight for his heart. With a strained cry, Jae-hyun barely deflected the shot. He was pushed back by the sheer force. A sickening whack smashed into the monster's skull. Blood exploded from the impact as a relentless flurry of blows rained down. It was pure carnage. Suddenly, a brilliant light flared from his eye. Shwum. A raw, untamed power surged within him. A new ability was about to be unlocked. Jae-hyun leaped into the air. His spectral allies swarmed with him, a storm of fury. He rained down blows on multiple monsters at once. A deafening thud. One of the monsters crashed to the ground. The others shrieked in a frenzy of confusion and rage. An unseen enemy had just struck. In a single, blinding instant, the horde was annihilated. Monsters flew like rag dolls, utterly crushed by a power they couldn't even see. Done. But then, a new horde charged. Jae-hyun yelled in sheer panic. He miscalculated, there were too many. They were forced to dash for their very lives. Suddenly, goblins swarmed them from all sides. It was the entire second level. Amidst the chaos, Jae-hyun roared a desperate command, to the stairs. Come on, hurry, dash. Kim Jae-hyun's voice was raw with panic. A frantic escape began, the entire group scrambling desperately for their only way out. Jae-hyun heaved against the door with a desperate groan, but a monstrous green hand reached through the gap. He slammed it shut with all his power. Crash! The door splintered under immense force. A monstrous claw slammed into Jae-hyun, sending him flying. He was completely overwhelmed. Push! The men threw their entire bodies forward. Veins bulged and teeth gritted in a final, desperate effort. Wham! They made impact. Their push revealed a nightmare. A monstrous beast with glowing red eyes unleashed a horrifying shriek. Its giant claws began to scrape. The door buckled under the monstrous force. It won't hold. Jae-hyun roared, his body trembling. He screamed for the others to run. Now, his patience was gone. Fueled by fury, Kim Jae-hyun shoved his comrades aside. He bellowed, stand aside. There was no stopping him now. And then, a new power awakened. The system granted him, strength of a gorilla. He roared as a primal blue aura erupted from his very core. Suddenly, an explosion of pure power. Blue lightning erupted from Jae-hyun's entire body. He was channeling an insane amount of raw energy. A deafening shriek. The raw energy thrashed violently around him. But then, he started losing control. His body was at its absolute limit. An unseen power made his body tremble uncontrollably. A primal scream ripped from Jae-hyun's throat, his mind shattering from absolute terror. His terror forged into pure will. He roared, I have to make this work. A torrent of blue lightning erupted from his very core. The path was clear. With a desperate shout, he called to his comrade. Mr. Choi, we're good, let's go. Their chance to escape was finally here. Then, bam. A vicious force slammed Kim Jae-hyun against the wall. A scream of pure terror was ripped from his throat. Their escape was over. Suddenly, a mad dash. Kim Jae-hyun exploded forward, thundering down the steps with pure determination. His target was right there, unsuspecting. Suddenly, the door exploded inward. A horde of green monsters swarmed the room. He stumbled back in pure terror, shouting Mr. Choi's name. A terrifying screech tore through the air. The monster loomed over him as he crawled, his voice breaking. He yelled, go on without me. A final sacrifice. Kim Jae-hyun strained with everything he had, sweat flying. Darn it, he roared in pure frustration. He was losing control. Eyes glowing with pure rage, he unleashed his power. A sickening whack echoed as his fist connected, sending a spray of blood into the air. With a desperate scream, Kim Jae-hyun lunged forward, bat held tight. He yelled for Mr. Choi to hurry, his arm reaching out. It was now or never. A chilling scream ripped through the air. Jae-hyun was trapped on the ground, swarmed by dark figures. An attacker raised a bat for the final blow. Suddenly, a violent storm of purple energy erupted. Shwum! The screaming goblins were thrown back, utterly powerless against his immense strength. Suddenly, his world stopped. Eyes wide with terror, a single choked sound left his lips. He was completely overwhelmed, his mind unable to process it. A monstrous shriek ripped through the air. Suddenly, a horde of creatures charged him. Drenched in sweat, he screamed a name in sheer panic. Ambush! Suddenly, a beast with glowing red eyes lunged from above. He had no idea what was coming. Death from the shadows was swift and silent. Kim Jae-hyun unleashed his rage, swinging his glowing blade. Swing! The monster reeled back, stunned by the sheer force of the impact. Payback time. His face a mask of fury, Kim Jae-hyun unleashed a storm of arrows. He screamed for Deoksu to hurry. The pressure was on. Surrounded. Green monsters lunged, but Jae-hyun met them with pure fury. His bat became a blur, his roar of, "yeah," echoing with each savage swing. Blades flew past him, but Kim Jae-hyun exploded forward, a blur of motion. He ignored the danger, charging right into the enemy's desperate assault. With gritted teeth, they yanked on the taut wire. Every muscle screamed in protest. A desperate cry echoed through the air, "Hurry!" Jae-hyun scrambled down the stairs, a horde of monsters swarming behind him. But salvation wasn't below. Instead, 2 rifles aimed right at him. A dark turn. A colossal shadow rose over the fallen, its piercing red eyes burning with malice. A terrifying new power had finally awakened. Suddenly, a monstrous shadow loomed over the city. Its piercing red eyes glowed with pure menace. Kim Jae-hyun had transformed into a total nightmare. A horrifying roar tore through the air. The shadowy monster's voice boomed with pure rage. He swore a terrifying oath to kill them all. Suddenly, an immense force launched him forward. He cried out, his body no longer his own. An invisible power had taken complete control. Jae-hyun collapsed to the floor, panting heavily. A wave of pure relief washed over him. He had narrowly survived. "Phew, that was close," he gasped. A sudden, searing pain. Jae-hyun cried out in shock and confusion. An invisible force violently grabbed his head, pulling him back. What was happening? Suddenly, a voice cried out in disbelief, Jae-hyun? He froze, his eyes wide with shock. In that instant, he was recognized. It wasn't luck. Jae-hyun revealed he'd been watching with his ultimate eye. His summon activated at the perfect moment. It was all his grand design. A deafening pang. Jae-hyun screamed, his leg exploding in pain. He crashed to the ground, blood everywhere. His face twisted in pure agony. A man collapsed, his leg bleeding horribly. Panic seized Kim Jae-hyun as he rushed to his side. "Oh no! Are you okay?" he cried out in alarm. Blood gushed from a horrific gash in his leg, but he just gritted his teeth. "I'm fine," he insisted, "it'll heal soon." Unbelievable defiance. A stressful realization struck Jae-hyun. Amidst all the chaos, he still needed to register the new medicines. The immense pressure was mounting. A desperate voice commanded him, "Stay right here." But Jae-hyun's face was a mask of resolve. He ignored the plea and reached for the door. With a sharp slide, the case opened. A fully stocked medical kit was revealed, perfectly organized. Jae-hyun was ready. He was completely focused. He mused on the importance of medicine. But then, a sudden memory struck him. A flashback to his childhood, of a crying boy and a worried mother. Clack. Medical supplies were laid out with grim purpose. Scissors, pills, tape. An urgent, unseen procedure was about to begin. Jae-hyun sat alone, surrounded by a sea of medical supplies. The stark reality of his condition crashed down on him. He felt utterly defeated. A thought flashed through his mind like lightning. Suddenly, it all clicked. A gasp escaped his lips as he finally understood everything. With focused speed, a hand plunged into the first aid kit. It snatched a white spray bottle from the supplies. Every second was precious. Suddenly, a system alert. A glowing first aid kit popped up with an option to restore. A wave of satisfaction washed over him. Perfect. Suddenly, a loud clack. An unseen hand reached down for the box. Jae-hyun's head snapped up, his face a mask of pure, unfiltered shock. He froze. The tense silence shattered. With deep concern in his eyes, Kim Jae-hyun asked to see the wound. A fragile moment of trust hung in the air. He pulled up his pant leg, revealing a gruesome, bloody wound. Despite the horrific sight, he insisted it was nothing. "It's fine," he said calmly. With intense focus, a hand moved in with tweezers. "Let me disinfect it first," a voice offered. Jae-hyun watched, consenting. The delicate task began. Suddenly, a jolt of agony. Jae-hyun let out a sharp cry, his face twisting in pain. Sweat poured down his face. What was happening to him? With steady hands, Jae-hyun plucked the final shard from the bloody leg. The man sighed, his entire body relaxing in a wave of pure relief. Phew. Jae-hyun ordered his injured comrade to rest. He had to help the others. With grim determination, he rose to his feet, ready to face the battle alone. "I need to see." The thought burned in his mind. He had to know what was happening downstairs. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open, blazing with resolve. Swoosh! A dark power surged through Kim Jae-hyun. His eyes ignited with a terrifying purple glow. He had awakened something truly dangerous. With pure determination, Jae-hyun drew back his bow. An arrow of pure energy materialized. He fired, sending a devastating streak of light forward. Chink! The energy beam pierced the monster's open mouth. Jae-hyun gritted his teeth in fury. A direct, lethal blow right through the beast's throat. Kim Jae-hyun's wires ensnared his foe. Trapped and helpless, the man screamed a final, desperate warning to his ally, Deoksu. "Run!" But it was too late. The horde swarmed over him. Jae-hyun screamed in agony and desperation, clawing at the ground. He had to escape, he had to keep moving. Ish! Glowing projectiles rained down on him. With lightning speed, Jae-hyun swung his bat, deflecting the deadly attack. His focus was absolute. Ish! Jae-hyun desperately threw himself forward. His face contorted in agony, every fiber of his being screaming with the effort. He had to push on. Scree! Vicious green monsters lunged from the shadows. Jae-hyun strained, desperately holding them off. He was trapped between two snarling beasts. Suddenly, a blurry object swung right for Kim Jae-hyun's head. His eyes went wide with sheer terror. There was no time to escape. Jae-hyun moved like a blur. His glowing blue weapon crashed down with a sickening thwack. The monster reeled, blood exploding from a critical wound. Blue flash ripped through the air. Kim Jae-hyun attacked with blinding speed, his eyes glowing with power. A desperate warning cry echoed, "Byungho." Suddenly, a monstrous force slammed into Jae-hyun. Wham! He cried out in agony as savage blows rained down, tearing him apart without mercy. Dark power flared in Kim Jae-hyun's eye. He watched from afar, completely satisfied. His voice was filled with confidence. "He's doing great." A sinister smirk crept across his face as his eyes flared with purple light. He was glad he registered him as a vassal. It was all part of his plan. Ack! A devastating blow landed, crushing the monster's face. The creature shrieked in agony, blood erupting from the point of impact. It was brutal. Jae-hyun yelled out, his voice filled with urgency, "Jeon, are you ready?" Crouched low, Jeon slammed the switch. Yes. The operation was a go. Bruised but resolute, he confirmed their part of the plan was a go. "We're all set." The final piece clicked into place. The mission was on. The horde closed in. Jae-hyun desperately lunged forward, his voice a panicked roar. He screamed for Byungho to run. They were out of time. Jump! With breathtaking speed, he vaulted over the railing. There was no time to think, only to act. His escape was a blur of pure adrenaline. Suddenly, a massive wave of blue energy crashed down. Slash! The monsters shrieked in confusion, completely overwhelmed by the surprise assault. Water exploded in a violent frenzy. Two monstrous creatures thrashed and screeched in pure agony. A brutal, unseen assault had just begun. Kim Jae-hyun's face contorted in a desperate roar. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "Do it, Jeon. Bolt." It was all or nothing now. Got it. With a determined shout, his finger slammed down on the prominent red button. A loud click echoed. The device was finally activated. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of blue lightning tore through the darkness. A violent bzzzt echoed, the sound of pure, untamed energy being unleashed. Suddenly, blue lightning erupted. Wires tangled around his bandaged legs pulsed with raw power. His body was being forcefully, painfully remade. Suddenly, the two warriors collided. A violent storm of blue and purple energy erupted from the impact. The very air crackled with raw, destructive power. A wave of notifications flooded his senses. Goblins fell, experience points soared, and his wallet got heavy. But then, a new skill was unlocked. Deep thump shook his core. His eye flared with dark purple light, shadows corrupting him from within. A tear escaped. He was losing control. Suddenly, a vicious purple energy exploded around Jae-hyun. He let out a raw scream as unimaginable agony tore through him. He was losing control. Suddenly, a maelstrom of dark power erupted around Kim Jae-hyun. Raw energy crackled as he focused, unleashing a terrifying new level of strength. Mysterious power source activated. Immense purple energy crackled with lightning, tearing through the darkness. Something incredible had just begun. A terrifying shriek echoed. Monstrous creatures convulsed, unleashing a storm of violent purple lightning. Raw, chaotic power filled the air. Sudden ding. A cold system alert flashed, confirming their worst fears. Hostile entities detected. The danger was no longer a possibility, it was here. A cold voice announced their termination. Monstrous entities writhed and shrieked, their bodies bulging as violent purple energy consumed them whole. And then, a cataclysm. A storm of purple lightning and raw power detonated. The monstrous entities were completely annihilated in a single, violent blast. Ding! A goblin fell. And another. And another. System notifications couldn't keep up with the non-stop slaughter. The kills just kept piling up.